Hello, everyone. Welcome to the pre-show. It's the pre-show of the A+ study group. We will be getting started in about 10 minutes. If you're watching this in the replay and you just don't want to sit through any of this pre-show, you can fast forward about 10 minutes and we'll be getting things started. Right now, we're just making sure that cameras work. They do. That screens are working. They do. That I can see the chat room. I can. Hello, chat room. That I've got things working here. Apparently it is. That's what I like. Everything. After all of the time off for the holidays and that we're back, it's a little bit troubleshootish. We had a few things to troubleshoot here, but everything seemed to be working fine, which is weird because I'm in here always shooting. I'm constantly shooting video. There's a big course underway. I'm shooting that course. And for some reason, when I'm ready to do a live stream, things aren't working as you might expect. On this system that I use every day to shoot video, for some reason, doesn't want to play nicely. But it's playing nicely right now, so we're good. Welcome, Alpha, Florida. Close to where my kinfolk are from. North Florida. North Florida checking in. A tornado in Ohio yesterday. No, we don't want those. Let's stay away from that. No more massive windstorms of any kind. Let's avoid those for the time being. South Africa's checking in. Welcome. We've got plenty of Q&A to do today. We've got plenty of announcements. We've got plenty of things. We've got plenty of stuff. Snow. Not familiar with snow. Don't know what that's like. It is. It's nice out here. What's the weather? The weather here is 63 degrees here in the world headquarters, Tallahassee, Florida. 60 actually. If we go right to where I am, 60 degrees. We've pretty much peaked out for the day. Guess the low will be 35 tonight. It's getting low. Tomorrow night, 32. That's cold. Let's put a link into the chat room so everybody can see A+ study group live stream is at professormesser.com/live. There we go. Even has a nice link to it. You can find it. You can dance to it. It has a nice beat. So we're going to get this started in just a moment. We've got whole set of new questions to go through. 2019 is here. It's our first study group of the year. There's a lot going on. It's constant content creation on this side. You probably, if you've been watching, if you've subscribed to my YouTube channel, you've probably seen that. Okay, camera 1 is working. Hello, camera 1. Camera 2. Camera 3 is what's on my front screen. And camera 4 is what you will eventually be seeing over on that side. So let's move this actually to there. I think I've got everything ready to go there. I think we got Don earned his A+ last Saturday studying for Network Plus. Congratulations on your A+. That's got to feel good to have those two done. Next week will be our Network Plus study group, so make sure you come back for that. We've got about 6 minutes to go before we get started for those of you checking in. The emails and notifications go out in about a minute, so hopefully a bunch of you will show up. In fact, I need to look and see what we've got going on. That is not the screen I wanted. There we go. Too many buttons. Lots of buttons. Can it really be too many buttons, though? Really? Really? I think we're fine there. We're okay there. Very good. Kanan passed 901 exam. Congratulations on that. It's actually thanks to your studying. The videos were the easy part. Making the videos were the simple part. Actually sitting for the exam is the tough part. Kansas City is here. Welcome. And Martinez passed Security Plus. I'm not a doctor. I do not have a doctorate in anything. I do not have a PhD in anything. Thankfully, I barely made it out of my 4-year degree. I have a bachelor's degree in business management from Florida State University, and that was it. There's no master's in my future. There's no doctorate in my future. In the U.S. anyway, professor is a honorary title. There is no formal licensure, or anybody can be a professor, I guess. So you can take that as it is. I guess there you go. We're done here. We can wrap it up. We're all finished. All studying for the 1000, 1002. I'll talk about the newer A+ also as we get into this. Talk about more of that for those things. So we'll get there. We will absolutely get there. There is about 4 minutes to go, and we will get started. Yes, the 220 1001 and 220 1002 sort of snuck up on us, didn't it? It's actually not out yet. We're talking about it like it's here. It doesn't actually exist yet. There is no such thing at the moment, but there will be. So everybody's ready to take the new exam, except the new exam is not ready for you to take it. And quite honestly, there's not much new. I'll talk more about that probably after show. I think a number of us will be talking about it. Plus, I'm doing a big overview of what's changed, what the differences are next month. Next month, we'll talk about those since it will be active. I don't think a lot of people are going to be taking that exam quite yet. If it follows the normal path, people will sort of wait a while. There's no content. There's nothing to study from. So why would you do that? For those of you that have arrived after getting your notifications, why are the lights always off in my studio? They actually are no lights in my studio. The only lights you're seeing are the lights in my studio. I have one tiny light at the top that's never on. Normally my windows are open. I have a sliding glass door. It's open. There's plenty of natural light that comes in. But for doing anything where it's pointing at me, I have to have light. You can't see the lights here, but there's some big lights above me and to the side that are lighting everything, because this looks great. It's like everything is lit in here. This is a beautifully lit room until you see that nothing is lit outside of this scope here. So it's sort of weird. Yeah, that you can't see. I've got the camera intentionally tilted down so you cannot see the lights that are there. Otherwise, it would kind of blind the camera. But just above, right here and right here, are some lights. Actually, it's right here and right here. You can kind of see it on my hand, how bright those lights are. That's super bright. But there. What is the purpose of this live chat? Well, I ask myself that question every month. Guest 282. The purpose of the live chat is for you to be able to send me a message so that I can see it and talk to it. For instance, you could ask, what is the purpose of this live chat? And then I can talk to you and tell you, I don't know. But we can talk. Let's put the live stream back in. Here's the live stream link. There it is. Right here. If you are somebody, I said YouTube, yes, you could watch this on YouTube, but you'll notice if you're on YouTube, there is no live chat. So you have to go to professormesser.com/live to get the live chat. So that's what that's about. A minute and a half, we'll get going. Less than, really. This is for both 901, 902, and what will be new. There's so much overlap. It's almost the same, quite honestly. Would I say my notes are enough to pass? Would you take any certification course and only read notes to take them? I don't know that that's a good idea. I don't know that that's really how you should be studying. I think if you can go through the exam objectives and you know everything listed there, then you could pass. How you get to that point, use notes, use videos, use books, use Q&A. So there we go. Yeah, YouTube does not have a big stream delay. Actually, you have the ability to tune it so that it can either have a very long stream delay or an extremely short one. And this one happens to be extremely short because we're going to be doing a lot of interactive things. And it's good that I can have an immediate feedback on what you're doing. We'll talk more about that in just a moment and get that there. So we'll get there in a second. We're about ready to get started. We might as well get this thing underway. It's time for the study group. Thank you for being here. Stand by. We will get started. Hold on, everybody. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the January 2019 A+ study group from Messer Studios. I'm your host, James Messer. I will be your MC the master of ceremonies for this next hour, where I will ask you questions and then live interactively using the magic of the internet, you will be able to answer those questions, and then we'll get to see how well we did. It'll be interesting. Trust me, it'll be great. We'll go through all of this. We have a lot of things to go through today. As a matter of fact, there's so much going on with the new year, with A+ certifications in general, with questions from the chat room. And if you are watching this live and you're on the YouTube side, there is a live chat at professormesser.com/live. You may want to flip over to my website because we've been talking back and forth during the live stream, during the pre-show, part of the live stream, and just talking back and forth on what's happening, what's going on, what are the things that are happening with the A+. And we'll talk a lot about these this month. We're going to talk a whole lot about new things next month. We'll get things going. This is my monthly study group. We're able to do this study group thanks to your support, your ongoing support of the website. Of course, every single one of my course videos is available for you to watch absolutely free. There's no registration. There's no paywall. There's no give me your email or your name or any of those other things. It's really more of you go to YouTube or you come to my site and you can watch them. So nothing can be easier than that. Some of you have also purchased an offline version of these videos, which I do have for sale. You can find out all about those at professormesser.com/download901 for our 901, 902 videos. It's actually for both 901 and 902. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. We always say that. You always hear people say, please subscribe. And that's because it is incredibly important. It tells Google and YouTube that you really do like this content. And that does help me because I have people at Google and YouTube who reach out to me occasionally to make sure things are going okay. They wouldn't do that if you didn't subscribe. So go to professormesser.com/YouTube. Do that. Smash the button, I think the kids say. So do whatever that is that the kids say to do. You can also get free A+ questions every day at professormesser.com/Twitter. Those are on there. So that's a good place to go. If you want to get your A+ question of the day, absolutely. It's available there. I do offer continuing education unit credit. If you already have your A+ certification, you already have Network Plus, you already have Security Plus, and you happen to be someone who's collecting CEUs. Some people collect CEUs for other certifications as well. They can use these videos for that. I'll be talking about this somewhere in the first hour. So listen out and I'll tell you exactly how you can receive a digitally signed email from me that says you must have watched this and here's your 1 hour of a webinar-based CEU. So that'll be something you can work on. There is a lot going on with the 901, 902 because it was released on December the 15th of 2015. So we're already 3 years into the age of the 901 and the 902 exams. And for those of you familiar with how CompTIA tends to do things, you know that there's going to be a new set of exams showing up shortly. And CompTIA has announced that on the 15th, right now as we record this January 9th, so in January 15th, there will be another 2 exams, a new set of exams available, the 221,001 and the 221,002. Now, the 901 and 902 are going to stick around for quite some time. We've got plenty of time. They're going to be here until July 31st. So if you're already studying, you've been studying for your 901, 902, you've been studying for months and you're getting ready to take the exams, keep doing that. Don't stop. Doesn't matter which exams you take, you're in the same certification. Now, if you are already A+ certified, you need to renew. There's a lot of ways to do that. You could take a renewal exam. You could take a higher level CompTIA exam, which means you take the Network Plus. It automatically renews your A+. You can take a higher level third-party exam from a third-party company, not CompTIA, but someone else. You can earn CEUs. There's also CertMaster CE, which I think a lot of people aren't aware of. It's brand new, relatively new, out the last few months. So it is an online system. It's an app you run. It takes about 3 to 6 hours, and you're renewed. No CEU fees, no collecting of CEUs, no additional costs. You just pay for the CertMaster CE, and you're done. So that's one of the easy ways to make that happen, is to really work through all of those types of things. So maybe that's something you might want to think about. If you're at the point where you need to renew and you're getting down to the last few hours, you could take CertMaster CE and be renewed for 3 years in a matter of hours. It's a great way to do it. So think about maybe something like that. As I mentioned, the 1001 and 1002 are the 2 new exams they release on the 15th. What's interesting is they're almost identical. to the 901, 902. A lot of people are wondering if they should wait or not. They always say, I want the newest content. Well, as it turns out, motherboards are still motherboards and memory is still memory. And so there's not much of a difference there along those lines. So think about those, but it's still the same 90 minutes per exam. It's the same scoring per exam. Nothing has changed with these. The only thing that has changed are a number of topics. And as someone who has been making these videos since the 600 series of the A+, so I've had 600, 700, 800, 900, now 1,000 series of these. This will be my 5th series. Usually there's a pretty dramatic change between editions, at least 30%, sometimes more between those two. About 20% of the content on these is new. 20% of the exam objectives are new. So if you're someone you're on the edge and thinking maybe I should take the new one, it's sort of a situation that's more about timing. Because the exams are so similar, it's really about, can you get both of them done before July 31st? And if you can, I would recommend you take the 900 series because there's so much more content available to study from. It's going to take a number of months, even after January 15th, for people to release books, videos, Q&A, other study materials. These things take time. So you will probably not find a lot of content suddenly appearing on January 15th. There's not going to be anything available on January 15th. Very little available on January 15th. So we will talk next month more about the 1000 series exam. I'll talk about differences. We'll get a lot of details of those things ready to go. But relatively speaking, you're not going to see a lot of content available for those things. So something to think about as you step through those. We're going to talk about the 901 and 902 today, a lot of the questions we do, but really most of the questions we do today will also apply to the 1000 series exam. Because so little has changed, you could almost go back over the last 3 years and you'd still have content that was very close to what you would need to know for the 1000 series exam. It's not perfect, but it's out there. You'll see something there. And we'll step through all of these different pieces here in the next hour or so. We'll go through a number of questions. I also have a number of questions available for free on my site. All of these practice tests are available at professormesser.com/popquiz. There's pop quiz questions for A+, for Network Plus, for Security Plus. I take archives of these study groups and I put those questions online and available for you to be able to see all of all my questions and what's available out there. So that'd be pretty good. Pretty good that's there to have those pieces. Some folks are asking, so how do we know what the 21%, 23% of new content is? You take the exam objectives for the 220-901, and then you put the exam objectives for the 220-1001 next to each other, and you match them. That's exactly what I did. You go through all of it, and you determine what's new and what's different. That's how I figured it out. That's where I got those numbers from. So go to professormesser.com/popquiz. You can quiz yourself. Free stuff that's there. Some people like to use them. This study group is available for replay. All of my study groups are available on my website. You can go through the video replay index of these. Some of you like to have an audio version of this. You can listen in your car. You can just have it automatically downloaded immediately after it's available. You can find links to those RSS feeds, the podcasting details, or just play the audio from this page at professormesser.com/podcast. I've got study group replays for the A+, the Network Plus, and the Security Plus. So you've got a few things that you can work through. Today, though, we're going to do Q&A. Enough of the introduction, enough of the hello, how are you? Let's do some Q&A. To be able to interact live, if you're watching this live, you can go to professormesser.com/QA, pop open a new browser window and do that. There's also apps available for your mobile device. You want an app called the Socrative Student App. So you can of course, get to that point to ask that question. And when you do that, there will be a question waiting for you that if you did everything right, it asks that a system administrator has identified a firewall rule that blocks TCP 389. TCP 389. Which of the following services would be impacted by this policy? So good question. How would that be impacted by this policy? I have some options for you. to go through. This is a multiple choice question. And in fact, this is a question from last month. So if you were here last month, you'll probably be able to figure this out. We used last month's question to see if you're able to get into Socrative and answer these questions properly. Is the possible answer name resolutions? Is it secure terminal communication? Is it VPN authentication? Is it router performance monitoring? Is it automatic IP address configuration? One of those would be impacted by a policy that blocked TCP 389. Maybe you know what that is. Maybe you have an idea of what that is. You can see interactively as you're answering, I can see the answers come through on my side. And we can see so far that 57% of you have said VPN authentication. 20% of you have said secure terminal communication. 10% said name resolutions. 8% said automatic IP configuration. And only 4% said router performance monitoring. Now, we're going to go to these questions by going to professormesser.com/QA and answering those. But of course, that's where you want to answer the questions. You don't want to answer online. You don't want to answer in the chat room. You don't want to put hints in the chat room. This is going to be one where we're going to try it ourselves and see if we can figure out what that is, as if we are sitting here at the exam ready to answer this. So those of you that have been watching this, about 61% of you have said VPN authentication. And indeed, VPN authentication is the correct answer. It's associated with this particular protocol, TCP 389, is associated with LDAP. And LDAP being the lightweight directory access protocol, that's a protocol commonly used to provide authentication. So if somebody's logging into a VPN authentication, if you're logging into the network for the first time, if you're logging into a router, if you're logging into a switch to perform switch management, it may be checking your username and password based on this larger directory, and it uses LDAP as the protocol to be able to do that. It's one of them to be able to do that. So that's another good one. And in fact, 65% of you must have remembered that, or you already knew that from last month. So that's one of those that's certainly available. I've got a whole rest of the hour. We're going to do Q&A like this. And then after that hour, I'll open up the phone lines. We'll do some Q&A over the phone lines and from the chat room. So you may want to stick around for that. One of you, some of you have asked previously about performance-based questions. Some of you realize that on the A+ exam, it's not all multiple choice. You get a handful of questions at the very beginning of the exam that are performance-based questions. That's what CompTIA calls them. They are questions that are anything but multiple choice. They might be fill in the blank. They might put you at a command prompt and ask you to perform a function. There could be drag and drop. It might have things to put in an order from highest to lowest or fastest to slowest. There may be a question that asks you to put things or match things together. So you never know. Exactly. They're usually right in the front. It's a handful. You could have 3. You could have 8. You could have more. We never know exactly how many questions you're going to get, but they're right at the beginning. And normally I tell people, jump over the performance-based questions, do all the multiple choice, and then come back. Not only from a timing perspective, but you can jog your memory with different things as you're going through the multiple choice. But you have to watch the clock. That's your only problem with that strategy, is to always watch the clock. But what I like to do at the beginning of the study group is ask you a performance-based question. So you can go back to any of my study groups. The first question we do is a performance-based question. And so let's do a performance-based question that deals with Windows, and it deals with having to either perform an upgrade to Windows or to perform a fresh install of Windows. So this is one where much of this is going to be based on questions from the 902 exam, but much of this question also applies to the 1002 exam. So this is one that does apply to both. And our question, upgrade or fresh install. Now on your side, it'll be a fill-in-the-blank question, but I'm really asking, if you're moving from one operating system to another, can you simply perform an upgrade, or do you have to do a fresh install? The 5 different scenarios, number 1 is Windows 8 Core to Windows 8.1 Pro. Can I perform an upgrade, or is that a fresh install? The second one is Windows XP Professional to Windows 7 Professional. Is that an upgrade, or is that a fresh install? That's the only one of these, by the way, that applies to the 902. Windows XP is obviously not part of the 10.02 exam. The 10.02 exam deals with Windows 7, Windows 8.8.1, and Windows 10. Our third option, upgrade or fresh install if you're going from Windows 7 Professional to Windows 8 Pro. Is that an upgrade or is that a fresh install? I wonder. Number 4 is Windows 7 Enterprise to Windows 8 Enterprise. Is that an upgrade or is that a fresh install? And lastly, the fifth one, Windows 7 Professional to Windows 8 Core. Is that an upgrade or is that a fresh install? If you think you know what these are, go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA. There's a fill in the blank there. You can simply put, I guess, U is upgrade and F is fresh install. You could do, if they're all upgrades, you can do 1U, 2U, 3U, 4U, 5U. So you don't have to type a lot of things. But this is one where you are asked on these exams, not just the 902, but the 1002 exam, should I be doing upgrades or should I be doing fresh installs? Which is important if somebody comes to you and says, I have this operating system, I need to get to this operating system, what do I do? Well, what do you do? This is really the focus of this. And you have to be able to put together a good scenario for this particular user. How can we have them keep all of their files? Are we able to save all of their settings? Do we have a way to easily make this happen? Is this going to be an involved process? How do we do it? Maybe somebody's going from one computer to another and they're different operating systems. What do we do? So all kinds of scenarios you need to think about. In this scenario, it's probably the same machine because we have the option to upgrade or with the option to fresh install. So think of it that way of working through those. Let's see how we did. Hopefully you made a note of the ones that you worked on. Let's go through upgrade or fresh install. Let's start with our first one, which is a Windows 8 Core to Windows 8.1 Pro. We're going from Windows 8 to Windows 8, which is certainly a big help because when you're, in fact, many of you did this when you install Windows 8, Microsoft came out and said, well, there's Windows 8.1 that's available and you can go from Core to Pro because you're moving up. You're going up from a less capable version to one with more features, so you're able to upgrade when you do those types of things. That's a pretty common scenario. If you are moving up to a higher level version of a Windows edition, you can tend to upgrade those. If you have to go the other direction, you are not able to upgrade those. It's one of the things that Windows does. The next one is Windows XP Professional to Windows 7 Professional. And one of the challenges with this that a lot of people don't realize is there is no upgrade path from Windows XP to Windows 7. A lot of us wanted to go from Windows XP to Windows 7. A lot of us skipped Vista. I did not, but a lot of us did. A lot of people skipped Vista and they wanted to go directly from Windows XP to Windows 7. Well, it's too bad. There was no way to do that. The only way to make that happen would be to go to Windows XP, then go to Vista, then go to 7. You could upgrade that way. But if you wanted to jump directly from Windows XP Professional to Windows 7 Professional, sorry, it's a fresh install. Vista does deserve some love. A lot of people don't realize Windows 7, it's Windows Vista. That's eventually, they got all the bugs out of Windows Vista, and they just put a 7 on it and said, look, it's a new operating system. And everybody said, well, this is so much better than Vista. It's the same thing. Same thing as Vista. I have no problem with Vista. Let's do another one. Number 3 is Windows 7 Professional to Windows 8 Pro. Well, Microsoft wanted you to have a very easy way to move from 7 to 8, so there is absolutely an upgrade path from Windows 7 Professional to Windows 8 Pro. Those are almost the same. They're exactly the same version. They're same edition. One's the Professional, one's Pro, but they're effectively, it's a lateral move, except you're going from 7 to 8. The fourth one on our list is Windows 7 Enterprise to Windows 8 Enterprise, and that's another scenario when you run into these things that absolutely is a lateral move. And that usually helps when you're dealing with those. So a lateral move is going to be an upgrade when you work through those. So that's an easy one to think about. And the last one is Windows 7 Professional to Windows 8 Core. So Windows 7 Professional to Windows 8 Core is a fresh install. We're going from a professional version to a core version. We're actually moving down. We're downgrading on this one, so we would not be able to upgrade this. Hopefully, these made a little bit of logical sense to you. You may be asked something like this on the exam. It may not be a performance-based question. It may be one that is a multiple choice question dealing with these. But now think of these in more of a logical term instead of trying to memorize a chart, and you'll start to see some patterns and how these work. Hopefully this worked for you. This is a very good example of a type of performance-based question you would get. Hopefully that will help you on your exam as well. Let's do another question. Let's move to multiple choice. Enough of the performance-based questions. Now let's do a multiple choice question. I have one for you that asks, which of these would be the best way to start the Windows Advanced Boot options? Which of these would be the best way to start the Windows Advanced Boot options? Would it be Start, Run, Weibo? Would it be Launch from the BIOS Setup menu? Would it be Press F8 when starting the computer? Would it be to restart the computer in safe mode? Or would it be to boot from the original installation media? Which of those would be the best way to start the Windows Advanced Boot options? If you think you know the answer, do not answer in the chat room. You want to go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA and put your answer in. See what you think is the right answer on these. Hopefully you're familiar with this. If you're not familiar with this, you will be. I'll say it that way. This will be a very common thing. Hopefully this is an easy question for you. But if you've not run into the Windows Advanced Boot options, that's something you absolutely need to know for both the 902 exam and the 1002 exam. So I tried to make questions this month that would apply to either set of certifications. So you're good there with those pieces to have those there. Make sure you think about those whenever you're working through those. Which of these would be the best way to start the Windows Advanced Boot options? Is it Start, Run, Weibo, which stands for Windows Advanced Boot Options? Is it Launch from the BIOS Setup menu? Is it Press F8 when starting the computer? Is it Restart the computer in safe mode? Or is it Boot from the original installation media? So, yes, well, this is good. If you're not sure about this, take a guess. And a good point in the chat room, people are mentioning never leave a question blank on the exam. From what we understand of CompTIA's method of grading, they don't take points away if you get a question wrong. They don't have anything deducted from you, which means you could take a guess on a multiple choice question with no penalty, which also means you should absolutely make sure every one of your multiple choice questions has an answer. If it doesn't have an answer, just guess. Put an A. Do Christmas trees. Do something on there. Never leave that question blank. Let's see how we did with this one. How do we do? 57% of you said press F8 when starting the computer. So we've got a good majority there of people that said press F8 when that computer starts up. 26% of you, though, well over a quarter said, not well over, but just over a quarter said launch from the BIOS setup menu. 10% said boot from the original installation media. 4% said start, run Weibo, and 3% said restart the computer in safe mode. So this is one of these things that you need to know about, except the name can kind of mess you up a little bit. This is the Windows Advanced Boot Options. This is the screen you get when you boot up and you press F8 when the operating system is booting. If you're running Windows 8 or Windows 10 and the system fails to boot 3 times in a row, then you also get this screen. So sometimes you don't even have to push F8. If things are really going bad, it may put you at this prompt anyway. This is one of those things also. Our computers are booting up much faster these days. You have to be very quick by pushing that F8 key to get exactly where we need to be. But this is where you would start safe mode. This is where you can start the Windows Recovery Console. The last known good configuration. What's Weibo? I put that first one in here. Start, run Weibo, the Windows Advanced Boot Options, doesn't exist. That's a made-up thing. I just thought I'd do an abbreviation there and see if that would jog any memory. 4% of you said I'm guessing A. Maybe that's what it is. This is the one. So that's where it always tends to make a difference. The F8 key is the one you're going to use for all of these. The key that you would use to start the BIOS might change depending on the manufacturer's computer you're using. We're not talking about starting the BIOS for this question. We're talking about starting the screen that gives us options for configuring Windows. So that's the one we want to work through whenever we're having these things happen. This is a very useful screen to have. Now, Windows 10 You also have the option of telling Windows 10 the next time you boot, bring the screen up. So you don't have to press keys or be very quick. The problem, of course, if you're troubleshooting a startup problem and you can't start Windows, then you can't get into Windows to tell it to start the Windows Advanced Boot option. So that's why they have that case in Windows 10 that if it continuously will not boot, it'll bring up the screen automatically for you. So that certainly helps for all of those pieces. So our correct answer was indeed the 59% of you that said press F8 when starting the computer. You would not just launch this from the BIOS setup menu. So you know, if you have a key that starts your BIOS, maybe you use the F2 key to start your BIOS, or you use Control S to start your BIOS, or you have Control 12 to start your BIOS. Whatever that BIOS that brings up your BIOS configuration screen, it's too late at that point. You're not starting the Windows Advanced Boot options from inside of your BIOS. So that's one where it becomes very useful to know that. The BIOS is a completely different thing. It's outside the scope of operating system. So we don't need to worry about that. Boot from the original installation media certainly gives us options that we can use to do troubleshooting, but it does not bring up the Windows Advanced Boot options. So that's an important distinction to remember. 4% said start run Weibo, which was just a thing I made up. That doesn't exist. And 3% of you said restart the computer in safe mode. Well, to restart the computer in safe mode, it helps if you get to the Windows Advanced Boot options so that you can then choose the option to boot in safe mode, which is one of those options right there on the screen. So that is pretty useful to have that there and have all of those pieces. The chat room, since F8 is directly tied to the operating system, well, it is, for Windows anyway. Does this mean the F8 option isn't available if there's no S on the drive? Well, that's what that means. If there's not an operating system that can, no Windows there to interpret the F8 to bring up the Windows Advanced Boot options, then no, you're not going to get the Windows Advanced Boot options. So that's one of the challenges, to have all of those things happen. And if you're running on Windows 10, by the way, there's a fast boot option in Windows 10 that's so fast you're not able to get this started. That's a challenge in Windows 10. And in my 10.02 course, I talk about that. I talk about other ways that you can get the Windows Advanced Boot options to come up if you have that fast boot option enabled. So it's a real challenge to have that there. So we'll talk more about that when we get to the 10.02 topics. Well, we'll certainly have that course coming out shortly. So we've got a lot of those things to do. Let's go to the next question, though. I've got more multiple choice here. Let's go through these. The next multiple choice question is a question. It's a visual daily double. Those of you listening on the podcast, this isn't going to help you very much because I'm showing a picture of an interface that says, which of the following would be most associated with this connector? It's actually not a picture of an interface. It's a picture of a cable, and there's something at the end of the cable. Which of the following would be most associated with this connector? And so the options available are speaker output, HD video, high-speed networking, external storage, or printers. So you've got a number of options available. Maybe some of you are familiar with this connector. If you think you know what it is, don't mention it in the chat room. You want to go to professormesser.com/QA. And you want to be able to look at that connector and figure out what is that thing used for. Notice I'm not asking you what the connector is. A lot of you are studying this and you say, I need flashcards so that I can look at a connector and I know what that connector is. The exam's not going to ask you what the connector is. The exam's going to assume you know what the connector is. It wants to know, how are you using this connector? Which is why I asked the question in this way and why the possible answers are speaker output, HD video, high-speed networking, external storage, or printers. That's what we need to know from this connector. So maybe we're familiar with this connector. Maybe you've run into this connector before. Let's see how you did with this. Would questions with pictures like this count as a performance-based question or regular multiple choice? I think this is a single multiple choice. On your exam, you could get a picture and it would be a single multiple choice. They could put 5 pictures on the screen, give you 10 different scenarios and tell you to match them. That would be a performance-based question. The important thing about the exam and performance-based questions, just for some of you that are worried about the performance-based question idea, they're just simply asking you the same information you already know in a different way. They're not asking you to do something different or new or to memorize something that's not in the exam objectives. If you know the content in the exam objectives, it doesn't matter how they ask the question. It could be matching. It could be fill in the blank. It doesn't matter. It could be a single picture that you're now looking at. Whenever you see this picture come up, it doesn't matter. So that's one that does come handy when you're thinking along those lines. Think of it that way. Let's see how we did with this one, with this single multiple choice question from the exam that happens to be a picture for the multiple choice question. And 60% of you said A, speaker output. 25% of you said high-speed networking. 8% said HD video. 7% said printers. And only 1% said external storage. So not a lot going on there. This is an unusual looking interface, isn't it? What would you use this for? Well, if you're someone who has an AV system, a big television with a big Dolby 5.1, 7.1 speaker system, you're now plugging in all of these audio and video cables to this system to get it to work, then you're probably connecting your audio with a Toslink cable. Toslink stands for Toshiba Link. This is an audio interface. It is, in most cases, optical fiber. It is one where you're getting a perfectly digital, clear communication from, in some cases, your audiovisual system, your television, and it's going, or maybe even your cable box, your gaming system. In fact, I have a mix amp for my gaming system that uses this Toslink cable. Same scenario, goes right to my Xbox. And that way I know I've got a perfect audio signal where I can get Dolby right in my headphones using this Toslink cable. It's pretty useful to have. And you need to be familiar with this interface because you will run into this and how it might look and have these things here. This is a pretty useful interface to have. And if you're doing anything with audio, even on higher end computers, you're going to see this Toslink cable to go back there. So make sure you're familiar with this. So for those of you that did say 60% of you chose a speaker output, that's what this is used for. It's audio. This is not a networking interface. It is a high-speed networking would not be the right answer. You would use high-speed networking would probably be an RJ45 connector. It would sometimes there are fiber connectors you might be able to use for your high-speed networking as well. This is not one of those types of connectors, though. It's not an ST connector. It's not an SC connector. It's not an LC connector. Those are fiber type connectors. You get into a lot of those with the Network Plus certification. So that's one thing to think about as you're going through this. Would not be HD video. It's not a video connector. It's not HDMI. It's not DVI. It's not VGA even. Would not be printers. Printers these days are pretty much USB. The older printers might be Centronics type parallel connectors. You might run into a few of those in the corner that just have to run all the time. These legacy systems, or it might be wireless these days. And external storage is also almost always USB. Sometimes could be something else like a Thunderbolt or even FireWire for the older systems. So answer A, speaker output was your correct answer. 61% got that right. This is SPDIF. This is the SPDIF standard for this. I don't have it on this particular slide. I cut a few things out to fit it in here, but it's exactly the same interface. So if you see SPDIF or you see Toslink, it's exactly the same thing. So then that should straighten things out for you on that side. There's so many interfaces, so many connectors, so many things you have to know. They're all in my videos. You can watch every single one of my video. You'll see everything that's listed in the CompTIA exam objectives. I use the objectives as my checklist when I create my videos. So you will find everything in there. If people ask, are the videos enough for the certification? The videos are enough for a video course for the certification. I, of course, say that you need a good book. You need plenty of hands-on. You need some Q&A. You need to do as much as you can. But you also might want to have a good set of notes. As you're going through all of these videos, you might want to make some notes for yourself. Some of you don't have time to do this. Some of you would prefer having all of the connections, all of the video, all of the graphics all in one place. And so I also have course notes available for that. There's course notes available for the 901 and 902 series that are available on my site. I should probably pull some of those up so you could see what they look like. Might not be a bad idea. There are also, by the way, if you're planning on taking the new set of exams. There's 1001 and 1002 course notes on my site as well already. They're already set and ready to go. So that's the piece of it. These are also PDFs. So when you buy them, you can download them immediately. Here's the PDF on my screen for the 901 course. So I've got step by step all of the things that I think are the most important thing you need to know for the 901 course. They're all listed there. Now, another nice part about this, I have some of these. Here's the 901, 902. There's a physical book you can get as well. Some of you like the digital version. Some of you prefer the full color printed version. So I have the option. And if you get the printed version, I ship it to you, and then you can also download the digital version for free. So you get twice the amount. I figure if you're getting a physical book, it's nice to have the digital version as well. And here's the already available. I've got the 1001, 1002, the Core 1, Core 2. We'll put them in order there. Both of those books. These are substantially larger than the 901, by the way. Everybody said, we want more stuff. So one of these is 50 pages long. The other one is 58 pages long. So these are big. They had to be in two separate books. They were so big. But you've got options. And this is, by the way, a great way to support the site. A number of you have said, it'd be nice if I had something that I could use to help support the site. And I don't take donations. I prefer giving you something for your dollar. So this is a great way to do it as well. And all of this, every dollar of this does go back to keeping the site going. If you've purchased these before, thank you so much. It really does go a long way. Some of you have asked if the course notes for 1001 and 1002 cover the new content on release day. No, they cover the content today. The 1001 and 1002 course notes are available right now, and they are complete. They're the full course notes. I already wrote the course. So the course is done. I'm just shooting video now. So everything you would need, these are full, complete, and ready to go. So you would have those in your hand today so that if you wanted to take the exam on release day, which is kind of crazy, you can absolutely do that. That's an option for you to have that as well. I do ship these books internationally. You end up paying for shipping. So unfortunately, international shipping is a little more expensive than domestic, but the option's there if you want to do that and have those available. Thanks so much for your support of this. If you want to know more about it, there's links on the pull down menus, links from the live page, and links at professormaster.com/A+CN. It's a great way to do it. Let's get more questions done. I got plenty more questions we can go through. Here's our next one. The question asks, it's a networking question. Which of these addresses would not be used on an internal IP network? Which of these addresses, would not be used on an internal IP network? These are IP addresses. So which of these IP addresses would not be used on an internal IP network? Would it be 172.29.18.7? Would it be 10.11.12.13? Would it be 192.168.192.168? Would it be 172.14.15.16? Would it be 10.254.254.254? No, a networking question. And this is one that's asking about internal IP networks. So already we have a couple of things we have to know about this. We have to know what an internal IP network is, and then we have to know why all of these numbers are here. So already we got two things we have to know. Fortunately, the A+ exam, both the 901 and the 1001, are almost identical when it comes to the networking section. They focus on the things you need to know to configure a device to be able to communicate on the network. It doesn't deal a lot with routers and subnetting and all of the things that the network administrator needs to know. It focuses on what the system administrator needs to know, what the laptop and desktop administrator needs to know. So one of the things that you do have to know is what an internal IP network is, and you have to know what all these numbers are. Hopefully you're familiar with those. Let's go through these again. Which of these addresses would not be used on an internal IP network? 172.29.18.7, 10.11.12.13. Would it be 192.168.192.168? Would it be 172.14.15.16? Or would it be 10.254.254.254? Could I have made this question more difficult to say? Probably not. If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA, and you can answer this one. This is one that if you're just getting into this particular part of technology, this is a pretty odd question to get, because if you've never touched networks before, you've never dealt with IP addressing, and certainly hadn't dealt with an internal, external, what the heck are you talking about, this could be a little bit challenging. So we're going to not only step through what the answer is, I'm absolutely going to step through how you would have been able to figure this out. So we're going to go through all of those, and let's do that right now. Let's see how we did with this one. A number of you have taken a stab at it, and we're just not sure. We did not get a majority on this one. 32% said 10.254.254.254 would not be used on an internal network. 22% of you said 172.14.15.16 would not be used on an internal network. 19% said 192.168, 192.168. We have 16% that said 10.11.12.13, and then 11% said 172.29.18.7. This is all over the place. We're just not sure what this one happens to be. And I think a lot of us, you can see we've got just a stair step all the way down. 11%, 15%, 19%, 21, and 33%. So I think we all got to the last one and said, I don't know, we'll just choose the last one. Maybe that's what it is. What we really need to know is the difference between these addresses. There are, in the world of TCP/IP addressing, there are two categories of addresses. Really, there's kind of, well, we'll talk about two different categories. Let's keep this simple. There is an internal address and there is an external address. In almost every case you will run into anywhere in the world, inside of an organization, you're using an internal address. Out on the internet side, when you're outside of your organization, out in the internet cloud, there are external addresses that are used. We're able to delineate these things, or the reason we delineate these between internal and external is because we have so few addresses in IP version 4 compared to the number of people that need to access them. There's about 20 billion IP addresses needed around the world, 20 billion plus IP addresses that we need, and yet IP version 4 can only give us just under 5 billion. So obviously, we've got a huge gap in the number of IP addresses, and the way we resolve that is internal in your organization. Use internal IP addresses. You have to know these ranges for your A+ exam, both the 901 and the 1001. And these ranges, they're not too bad. You have to know that anything that starts with a 10 is an internal IP address. These come directly from something called an RFC, or request for comment, which is a series of standards that are posted on the internet. The number for this request for comment is 1918. So somebody sometimes will say, hey, I need a 1918 address for this. Or that device is not being assigned an RFC 1918 address. They could just as easily say it's not being assigned an internal address. I'll know why we use these RFC numbers to describe these things, because it makes us sound very smart. So anything starting with a 10, 10.0.0.0 through 10.255.255.255, that entire range is an internal address range. Another internal address range is 172.16.0.0 through 172.31.255.255. That's another big range. So anything that starts with 172.16 through 172.31, that's an internal range. Another internal range is 192.168.0.0 through 192.168.255.255, which means if it starts with 192.168, it's internal. So don't worry too much about all these other numbers and CIDR blocks and host ID sizes that are on here. You can break this down by looking at the first number. If it's a 10, it's internal. If it's a 172.16 through 172.31, it's internal. If it's 192.168, it's internal. That's all you have to know. In fact, if you look at the IP address that's on your computer right now, it's probably one of those. If you look at the IP address that's on your internet router, the one that's facing your WAN side, it's probably not one of these. It might be if you're on DSL, though. Sometimes you get a double NAT type scenario. But my particular public IP address is not one of those, if I looked at my router right now. So if we go back and look at our list that we have here, 172.29 is certainly in that range between 172.16 and 172.31. It's between 16 and 31, that's an internal address. 10.11.12.13, it starts with a 10, and we know that if it starts with a 10, it's an internal address. 192.168.192.168, it starts with 192.168. It's an internal address. I'm going to skip one here, and we're going to go down to 10.254.254.254. It starts with 10. We just did this one. If it starts with 10, it's an internal address. The other option we have here, remember 172.16 through 172.31. The one I gave you was 172.14.15.16. It is not in that range between 16 and 31. It does not count as an internal address. The only address here that would not be used on an internal IP network is option D, 172.14.15.16. That is the correct answer. Only 22% of us were able to get that one right, but I hope by us not getting that one right, we now learned a lot about internal and external IP addresses, and maybe that helped you as well when you finally got to the point where you're trying to figure out what is it, why do I get these weird internal IP addresses? That's why. That's why you get those there, to have those available. In the real world, would 172.14.15.16 be used? Absolutely. In fact, if you go to, let's just go to one site that has a whois on it. Here's a whois.com, and I'm going to type 172.14.15.16. It will tell me who this public IP address is assigned to. And as it turns out, the organization assigned to this IP address, AT&T. So that's a real IP address that is really assigned to a company. Are they using that IP address or not? I don't know. Could they be using this IP address? They certainly could. Absolutely. So that's where you get into these scenarios where you're trying to figure out, is that a real IP? You can type it in and see at whois.com. So maybe that's something you can try as well with those details. Now, if you're watching this live stream, or you're watching this on a replay and you would love to get continuing education unit credit for this, you can follow these instructions. You must follow these instructions to be able to get the CEU. You go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, there's a Contact Us link. If you click that Contact Us link, it brings up a form. And on this form, it asks for your name and your email address. Make sure you give me those because that's important if I'm sending you back something. And then it asks you to put something in a box there at the bottom. In that box, we're going to, these are messages I read. This is a great way to contact me regardless of whether you're trying to submit a CEU or not. This comes directly to me, and I get to read through all of these. So you can put any message in there you'd like. But somewhere in there, I want you to put that it's the January 2019 A+ study group, and I want you to put the words RFC 1918. RFC 1918. That is your special code word of the day that will help you earn that CEU. That's going to be sent to me. It takes me about a week or so to process these. It's lately taking me a little bit longer. I'm getting better. Maybe I can do something with that today and get some of these out. So you can use those. If you don't have a CompTIA cert, you can't really use a CEU. CompTIA doesn't allow you to start accumulating those until you've passed their exams. And of course, you can use these CEUs for anything else that you would like. So that's the real key, is to follow those instructions very specifically and make sure that you know where to go, how to do it. Make sure you follow those instructions. Following those instructions is also an important part of earning the CEU. If you don't follow the instructions, you don't earn the CEU. That way I know you were watching. That way I know you were listening to what we were doing here. Let's do some more questions and some more answers. Here's another question for you, another multiple choice. This one is asking about Windows. A system administrator would like to configure a partition with the NTFS file system. Which of these utilities would be the best choice for this task? A system administrator would like to configure a partition with the NTFS file system. Which of these utilities would be the best choice for this task? Would it be format? Would it be file sys? Would it be chkdsk? Would it be xcopy? Would it be SFC? Yes, I say things funny when I'm reading the question intentionally. System administrator would like to configure a partition with the NTFS file system. Which of these utilities would be the best choice for this task? Would it be format, filesys, chkdsk, whatever that is, xcopy, or sfc? That's what you want to do right there, is answer that question. If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA, and you'll be able to answer this one. If you are watching this in the replay, obviously you won't be able to go to professormesser.com/QA because it's not there. You only do that if you're watching live, and the best way to know when the next live event is to go to professormesser.com/calendar, or click the calendar link at the top of the page, or look at the calendars that are already in the right sidebar of my website. You're already there. It's already looking right at you. It's like when you go to the grocery store and you say, "Where's the bread?" It's right in front of you. You literally have your hand on it, and you're asking me where it is. Oh, I didn't see it there. That's me. Same scenario. So now I've given you 3 options. You can find that calendar, no problem. It's got to be there somewhere, right? It has to be there somewhere to have that available. And there is some time conversions. If you go to professormesser.com/calendar, there's a conversion chart at the top. So whenever I do this live event, it will adjust and tell you when this time is based on where you are. So makes you know when you can work with that. Let's see how we did with this one. Maybe this one's a little better. A system administrator would like to configure a partition with the NTFS file system. Which of these utilities would be the best choice for this task? 75% of you said it's format. 13% of you said it's check disk, which is chkdsk, but it's commonly called check disk. 9% of you said filesys. 2% said SFC, and only 1% said xcopy. So nobody's thinking it's SFC and nobody thinking it's xcopy. 77% of you say it's format, but is it really? Is that really? Yes, it's really. That's exactly the way that you would define or configure a file system. Whenever you get a new computer, it has no idea how your operating system will be writing these files to it. You need some type of index. You need some type of filing system for your operating system to know where to put all of these files, and so that your operating system can pull those files up whenever you ask for them. Every operating system has a number of different ways that it could set up its filing system. That's what we call the file operating systems, the file system in your operating system. There's FAT32, there's NTFS, and Linux has all of their different file systems, and you've got other file systems in Mac OS. There's tons of different ones. And for Windows, there's NTFS. And NTFS, you can easily use the format command on your new drive to initialize that disk with the file system NTFS so that Windows knows how to now file things away using that filing system. That is one that does come in handy. Now, when you use the format command, you're erasing everything. You're starting over. You're effectively throwing out all of your files, making a nice clean filing cabinet to put all of your new files in. That may not be what you want to do. You may not want to be throwing things out. So don't use the format command willy-nilly. Don't use this format command as you're listening to me. Don't do that. Do not use format. It will effectively initialize the drive as if it was a brand new drive. So that's what you do not want to do, especially if you have data on it. But if you got a brand new drive, that's exactly what you have to do. Some new drives do come with file systems already configured on them. A lot of external drives do, so that you don't have to go through the format. A lot of people that get external drives, they just want to plug it into the USB and copy things over. So you may see that a file system has already been installed. If you're installing it new inside of a desktop computer, probably does not have a file system on it. You'll have to initialize the drive by using the format command. You first have to create a partition, and then you have to decide what file system do I want to put on that partition. It's sort of a two-step process. And after that, you can save your files there by using the format command. I think we have time for another question. So let's do another one that asks about LCD screen types. And this one happens to be an easy one. It's a 50-50 for you. This question asks, which of these LCD screen types provides the fastest response time? And I've given you 2 options. You probably won't get a question this easy on your exam, but I wanted to give you these 2 so you could really think about which one you should choose as it is associated with the fastest response time. Which of these screen types would provide the fastest response time? Is it TN or is it IPS? So which one of those would it be? Maybe you know what it is. Maybe you have an idea of what this is. But if you've never, ever worked with these technologies before, this could all be just nonsense in being able to work through these. This is one you'll also have to know for both the 901 and the 1001. I think this is also in the 1001 as well. This is a challenge. Yes, some of the people in the chat room are saying, I don't know these technologies. So this is a great opportunity to learn these technologies, to figure out what these things are. Now, I'm obviously asking about LCD screen types, so we already know it's associated with an LCD screen. But what are the differences? How do we categorize these? How do we choose? If somebody says, do you want a TN or do you want an IPS? Well, I don't know. Which one's better for what I'm doing? Because there are advantages and disadvantages to both of these. You might want one or the other, depending on what you plan to do with it. The person next to you may have a completely different set of requirements, and they might choose a different one. So you have to know what all of those things are as you're working through them, trying to figure out the details and getting those here. Hopefully, we can work through these and figure out those too. So let's see how we did with picking these LCD screen types. How do we do? As you can imagine, with a 50-50 question, 51% to 49%. It's effectively, we all took a guess, right? We tried to figure it out. IPS got 51%, TN got 49% in those. So let's break this down. They're primarily, as far as the computer industry is concerned, the most common types of LCD displays you're going to run into are TN displays and IPS displays. TN stands for Twisted Pneumatic LCD screens, which is why we just call it TN. Who wants to say, do you have any twisted pneumatic screens in stock? This is a very common technology because it has a very easy manufacturing method, although we're going to see here in just a moment, things are changing quite a bit in this industry. But these TN displays tend to have a very fast response time, which is great if you're someone who does a lot of gaming or something that needs that type of speed on your screen. It also has a low power draw, which is certainly helpful. But the viewing angles on this are just awful, which means if you go off to the side, you start to see an inverse set of colors. You've probably seen this if you've looked at the side of a screen, you're thinking that looks like a negative back in the days when people used to take pictures. That's a inverse display of the colors on this piece. So if we were someone who really needed a screen that a lot of people could sit around, maybe for presentations or in a conference room, maybe not a TN display. But if you're doing gaming, maybe you do want a TN display. So there's your pluses and minuses. The other type of display you might see is an IPS, an in-plane switching LCD. So this is one where you get, on these particular displays, the color representation is a lot better than TN, although TN's getting better and better as we go. But if you really put them side by side, you would probably see that IPS still is a little bit better in its color representation at the more expensive models. But IPS has always had a better color representation. So if you're someone doing a type of editing, either video or doing picture editing, maybe an IPS display is better for you, because you don't need a fast response time, but it really helps if you have better color representation. You don't have a lot of tailing when you touch them. For mobile devices, they tend to use more IPS because people tend to touch the screens, as irritating as that can be. Don't touch the screen. Don't do that. Stop touching my screen. I have to clean the screen. But they tend to be a little more expensive to produce than these. So this is one where we do run into those scenarios. So if somebody wants to have a screen that has the fastest response time and your only option is TN or IPS, your best answer is going to be the TN display because it has the fastest response time, and 49% of us, we took a guess, 49% of you got that one right, is the TN display for these. You notice I'm only talking about LCDs. Somebody in the chat room said, what about LED displays? How about those? Well, there's no real such thing as an LED display. What people are really saying is that this is an LCD screen that uses LED lights as your backlight, because LCD screens have to have a backlight. Up until a number of years ago, we were using cold cathode fluorescent lamps, CCFLs, as our backlight, and which worked great, except they were a little big compared to LEDs, and they were a little bit more of a power draw compared to LEDs. What you've pretty much seen these days is we've gotten rid of the CCFL LCDs, and pretty much all the LCDs you see these days have the LEDs as the backlights. So if you see somebody that says, I need an LED display, what they really says is I need an LCD display with an LED backlight, which, by the way, is pretty much all of them these days. It's a real challenge for both of those. So maybe that's where we need to work through those as well, to have those. This is a real challenge. So well done with this. I think you guys did pretty well with the questions this week. We got through a whole hour of Q&A, of the formal Q&A. But I'm going to open up the phone lines in just a minute. Stick around. We're going to open up phone lines, and you can ask questions in the chat room. Somebody's already asking questions about 901, 902. Should I really be studying for this or not? I will answer that question in just a moment. We'll absolutely get there. I've got plenty of things to also talk about with the 1001, 1002, and what we are doing on this side to make sure that you are able to have access to the 1001, 1002 content. In fact, here's a pretty big announcement. Next month, there's actually 2 A+ study groups. That's right. We are no longer going to have a single A+ study group. I'm splitting these study groups up. There will be a 1001 study group, and there will be a 1002 study group. And if you go to the calendar right now at professormesser.com/calendar, you can get on the notification list for one or both of these if you would like. You can attend all of them. You can attend every live stream I do if you would like. Absolutely. So if you're studying for your 1001, we're going to focus on 1001 during that hour. If you're studying for your 1002, we're going to focus on 1002 during that hour. Does it double the amount of work I have to do? Yes. But gosh darn it, it's worth it for you. I think it'd be fun too. I like these live streams. The thing that is different, and you will notice this, up to this point for the last number of years, we've always had a Wednesday live stream for A+. Well, there's not enough days, there's not enough Wednesdays in the month for me to still have my week off, which is incredibly important to the things we do here. So next month in February, notice the study groups are on Tuesday, Thursday for A+. And then we go back to Wednesdays. We have Wednesday the 13th and Wednesday the 20th for Network Plus and Security Plus. So make sure that you know which study group you want to go to. The calendar on the website is going to be pretty important at this point, just so that you will know exactly when those study groups are going to be. If you show up on the 6th of February and you're wondering, where is everybody? We're not there. You missed the one we just did, and you got to stick around for the one we're going to have next. So make sure that you know exactly when this is going to be. So that's pretty important. We'll talk more about when all of this is happening, how all of these things work right after we finish up this part of the live stream. I open the floor for questions, and I will talk about what's happening with 901, 902, what's happening with 1001, 1002, and do I have enough time to study? We'll talk about all that in just a moment. Stick around. Don't forget about being on Twitter. Subscribe there on Twitter. You'll be able to get a free A+ question every day of the week. Weekdays, I guess. Not Saturday or Sunday, but Monday through Friday. I've got all of my new A+ videos are already rolling out. We've already got, 35, 40 videos out there already for the 1001. So as videos are created, I put them out there. The only way you'll know when they're added is if you subscribe and click the bell. So go to professormesser.com/YouTube and do that. Of course, don't forget about my course notes at professormesser.com/A+CN for the 900 series, or just follow the links for the 1000 series. Have those there as well. Don't forget about my questions, my pop quiz collection, professormesser.com/PQC. Didn't really talk about that this month, but they're out there as well. Check the calendar. Make sure you're ready to subscribe and be on those groups for the calendar for next month. And of course, we do a Network Plus study group next week. I do a Security Plus study group the week after that. Come back for those. Those are always fun to do. Stick around for the next hour. We'll be glad to take your questions, your phone calls. I'll open up the phone lines. You'll be able to do all of that. But thank you for being here for this one. We wouldn't be able to do these study groups without your participation, and it's always a lot of fun. Thanks for being here. Stick around for the after show. Otherwise, we will see you next time on the A+ Study Group. Well, there is plenty to talk about. So let me first get the phone lines up and running so that everybody can get to the phone lines, and then I'll answer questions from the chat room, and we'll get all of those there as well. We got plenty to go through. What a great holiday. I hope everyone did have a good holiday over the last 3 weeks. We haven't been on here doing a live stream for 3 weeks. Can you believe it? Me either. We'll get this started here. I'll get called in to the show. So let me get things going on my screen. You're going to have to look at me just a little bit longer while I type things in, while I call in, while it makes noises. Ding, ding, ding.
Thank you for calling.
Ding. You're welcome for me calling. And then I type in a number, and then I push the pound sign, and it says, well, you can't hear that, but that says enter my 6-digit PIN number, which is redundant. And I expect to hear,
welcome.
Welcome. There we go. So people are already calling in. If you would like to call in, I would welcome those phone calls. You can call anywhere in the continental United States by going to 855-785-7545. It's a toll-free number. Doesn't cost you a dime. I pick up the call. All the costs of that call, all the per minute charges are all coming to me. I will pay for it. I got the bill on this one. And it's a toll-free number. You can call from anywhere in the continental United States. But if you're outside of the continental United States, you can call for free using Skype. Skype doesn't charge you or require any Skype minutes if you are calling a toll-free number. So for Skype, put a +1 at the beginning and use the same number. +1 855-785-RJ45. That's +1 855-785-7545, and you can call in as well. Folks are already holding. Thank you for holding there. I'm going to answer a few of these questions that came through at the end of the study group. And everybody wants to know about 901, 902, 1001, 1002. When does this happen? So question in the chat room, Johnny asked, are the 901 and 902 exams no longer available after July 31st? That's correct. They go away. They are retired. You will never be able to take them again. You will never see them again after July 31st. People will be taking the 901 and 902 exams all the way up to July 31st. But as soon as August 1st comes around, it disappears forever. So Johnny says, I ordered textbooks for both the 901, 902. I fear I may not be prepared to take the test on time. Now, 6 months is a long time to be able to study for this exam. There's plenty of time to be able to get both of these done. But you could be like me. I got a whole world of things happening outside of this camera, and it takes me a long time to study for an exam. So you may not be able to get through all of these. So you need to make a decision now, because what you don't want to do is to study for your 901 or 902, pass that exam, and then not have enough time to take the other one. Because if that happens, you have to start all the way over again on August the 1st with the 1000 series. And you don't want to have spent money and time passing a single exam and then not having time to finish that up. So you may want to study for the 1001 and 1002 instead. Now, you said you bought books already, but as I mentioned earlier, it's surprising how much of this is exactly the same. So that's the situation you're going to be in, is that the exams that you will find for the 1001, 1002, not hugely different. There are subtle differences in them. So get both exam objectives, read through them, make sure you're familiar with them. That would be a great way to try to figure out what you're doing. But you need to make a decision now. The challenge you're going to have is that books, videos, Q&A, and other test content to help you learn for the 1001 and 1002, it usually takes a number of months for those to come out after an exam is made available. So you may want to study 901 content and then just study what's different until the 1001 content is available. That may be a way to do it, to have those there. So that's my recommendation for you. Maybe that works for what you're trying to do. Maybe it doesn't. There's no real difference, by the way, between them. Another question in the chat room, is there any benefit to taking the 1001 and 1002 instead of the 901, 902? At the end of it, you get exactly the same cert. If you look at the certification that you earn by passing the 901, 902, identical to the certification you earn after taking the 1001, 1002. There are some people that took the 700 series exams that have just simply been renewing them every 3 years. They certainly didn't take the 1000 series exam, and yet they have exactly the same A+ certification that you would. So you think about it along those lines, you always have to maintain your certification and keep it up to date. And so employers only care that you're A+ certified. I have yet to find someone who's giving me an actual story where somebody said, no, they really wanted me to have the 1001, 1002 exam. Because it doesn't make sense. If you have already earned your exam, you earned your certification 6 years ago, you've constantly been maintaining it, you don't have to take an exam again. So people don't ask for an exam version. They ask if you're A+ certified. They don't care how you got it. The fact that you got it's great with them. So that's pretty useful if you're in that scenario. Need to get something warm to drink here. So other questions. Let's quickly, while folks have been holding, because a lot of people are calling in, and then we're going to come back to the chat and get questions. But the first person in our queue is area code 773. Hello, caller. Thank you for calling. What's your name? Where are you calling from? Hey, caller. Caller's listening to the stream. Caller. Turn the streams off, and you'll be able to hear through the phone what's going on. Are you there, caller? 773?
Joe.
Hey, Joe.
From Chicago.
Hey, Joe from Chicago. What can we do for you?
Yes, sir. Professor, you know that technologies are overlapping in many areas. And I wonder, are you going to touch on IPv6 in your videos?
In fact, the latest Network Plus goes more into IPv6 than it has in the past. They go into especially how you would create an IP version 6 address if what you have is a MAC address already. They go through a conversion process. There's a lot of detail there, probably more than I've ever seen in any of the CompTIA exams. There is also a lot of IPv6 in the Cisco CCENT exam. There's a ton of IPv6 there. And I have a set of course notes for that, but I haven't made any videos for those. That would be a great series of videos to do for IPv6 that would be associated with those, because that covers really everything you need to know to configure and set up IPv6 on your routers. That might be even fun to do as well. Maybe once we're through with the A+, you'll see a lot more IPv6. There's just a little taste of IPv6 in the 901 exam and the 1001 exam. There's a lot more IPv6 in the Network Plus. There's almost no IPv6 in Security Plus, because that's a little bit above IP addressing. And then you've got that Cisco exam, which really goes into a lot of details with IPv6. So I think that's a great idea. I think we lost Joe. Joe hung up. He was tired of me talking. I don't blame you, Joe. But I think there's a lot of things that we're seeing a lot more people do a lot more with IPv6. This has taken a long time. I started working with IPv6 in the 90s. And when I was working for a company that made network analysis devices, and we were already decoding IP version 6 back then. Nobody was using it, but we could decode it. We could promote that we were decoding it. You were ready for the future. Back in 1996, whenever that was, in the year 2000, you were able to do that. 20 years ago, you were absolutely able to decode IPv6. And now 20 years later, we're finally using it. So that's the real challenge, is getting those things ready to go. Let's go to the next caller, 978 area code. Oh, hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, I'm Steven, and I'm from Massachusetts.
Hello, Stephen. What can we do for you?
So I was wondering, when our 901 and 902 expire, can I do a 901 and then do a 1002 and still get the A+ cert?
Oh, wouldn't that be nice if we could mix and match between these? But no, CompTIA does not let you mix and match. Unfortunately, if you take the 901, you have to take the 902 and vice versa. They're a pair and they can't be separated, which is why I mentioned earlier, if you take the 901 and you're not able to take the 902 before they're retired, you got to start all over again with the 1001 and 1002. You don't want to be in that position.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for calling, Stephen. That's what I tell people all the time is don't get caught. Don't get caught in that scenario. And that's why it's a little difficult right now. It generally takes people about 3 months on average to pass one of these A+ exams, which means both of them together take about 6 months. Well, guess how much time we have before the 900 series is retired? About 6 months, which is why I'll give you this perspective for those of you wondering what you should do. If I was going to take the A+ exam right now, I'd study material from the 1001 and 1002 exams. I probably would not be studying for the 901, 902, even though I know there's a lot more content available for 901, 902. The differences in the exams are so minor, and I can't trust myself to have this done in 6 months. My world is too chaotic. There's no way I'm going to be able to do it. Some of you, though, are very good at this. There are people on my site that they studied for a week and took their A+ exam. So they could get this done in 2 weeks and they'd be finished. But they already had a long history in the industry. They already knew a lot of these technologies. They weren't starting fresh. So you also have to think about what you know and where you're coming from, and maybe that would help as well. To the 302 area code. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from? It is you. How are you? What's your name? Where are you calling from?
My name is Brian from Wilmington, Delaware.
If you have a way to pick up the phone or get off a speaker, that would be nice. Or you're going to ask the question. We'll figure it out.
Hello, is it better?
Oh, that's much better. Thanks.
Oh, okay. I'm Brian from Wilmington, Delaware.
Hey, Brian. What can we do for you?
Yeah, I was looking at this stuff. It's a lot of stuff to remember. Do you ever find yourself forgetting something?
I barely know what I had for dinner last night, Brian. I can't remember. It's on the slide. For me, it's just pure repetition. You know, one of the things that has happened over the years, I started doing these A+ exams back in the 600 series. And I really started creating the exam, the videos themselves, because I wanted to take the A+ certification myself. And I thought this would be a great way for me to take notes and study the material. And after a while, you start to do that. You start to figure out more of what is in the details because you have to explain it to other people. So it's gotten to a point where it is all repetition. And fortunately, I do these monthly study groups, so it keeps me fresh. But for instance, I just finished putting together the 1001 and the 1002 courses. They are already completed. I'm in the process now of filming, of recording them. I guess we don't film anymore, but recording them. And on some of these, I have to look and say, I don't remember actually putting that in there. I don't remember where that comment came from the 900 series. So absolutely, this content, this information, there's tons of it. And if you're not in it every day, you're not working with it all the time, it tends to get a little faded in the memory. It certainly helps if you're able to do that. The last job I had, for example, was 4 years ago now. I worked for someone else, worked for a different company. It was a next generation firewall company. I was a systems engineer. I traveled all over the place, configuring, setting up, working on these systems. And now I'm starting to see, could I get in the command line and do things now? I have to now think back of what I was able to do to get that started up. What were those commands again? You start to forget them. So it is sometimes a challenge to make that happen. It's all about repetition. It's all about making notes for yourself. And I think if you can explain them to someone else, it's also a great way to study. So if you have a significant other who can put up with you, you can go through the exam objectives and start explaining some of these topics to them. As it turns out, it helps you remember them better as well.
Okay. All right. Thanks. That's all I wanted to know.
Thanks, Brian. I appreciate the call. That's one when you start getting into the details of how am I going to remember all this stuff. You will be able to figure it out. You will be able to remember this content. The A+ exam, the 901, 902, and the 1001, 1002, they're big exams. They are broad. There are tons of things you have to remember, but you can do it. And you start to get, when you work with these over and over again, you do start to remember some of these things. Some of you remember the format command for this one. Oh, I just used the format command. You just used it, so of course you remember that. It's a great way to have it stuck in your head and remember those things as well. So somebody asks in the chat room, Annette asks, I only have access to systems running Windows 10 and Vista. Is there a way to get experience with the keyboard commands for Windows 7 and Windows 8.1? Well, there is a great way to do that. How about for free? How about free? Would free work? I bet it would. Let me find the website that you want to go to is called modern.ie, modern.ie. It is a development site that Microsoft has created for people working with browsers in their operating systems. So Windows 7 probably is not out here any longer, but under the tools pulled down menu are virtual machines where they do have Windows 7. Windows 7, Windows 8.1, and Windows 10. That's exactly what you need for the 1001 and 1002 exam. They have virtual machines that you can download for free from their site as long as you follow the terms and conditions for this, which I've already read through. The EULA for this, the End User Licensing Agreement, says that you will not use these as your production desktop machine. These are only for development use. These are only for non-production purposes, which, by the way, is exactly what we need when we're studying for our A+ exam. So modern.ie. This will also, if you've never worked with virtualization before, let's choose Windows 10. You have the option to download this using VirtualBox, Vagrant, VMware, Hyper-V, or Parallels formats. Now, if you don't know what any of these things are, now's the time to learn, because starting with the A+ exam, you need to know how virtualization works on the desktop. So if you've never worked with virtualization, download VirtualBox. It's free. It's incredibly capable. It runs in Windows. It runs on a Mac. So it'll run practically anywhere. I think they have Linux flavors too. VirtualBox is a great way, and you can download it. It's a big download. It's gigabyte download. But once you download it, follow their instructions, which they have. View the installation instructions. Follow those instructions to the letter, and you'll have a virtual machine running on your desktop with that operating system that you can do anything with. You can break it. You can. In fact, I recommend people take a snapshot as soon as they get it installed. And then if they mess up the operating system, they can click a button and go back to that snapshot. It's a beautiful thing. Virtual machines are amazing. They're incredibly useful. And in the case of this particular virtual machine on this particular website, absolutely free. Gotta love that. So hopefully that will be useful. Let's go back to the phones. Our phone lines are full, so if you're calling in, I apologize. We'll talk to some of these. Thanks for holding for so long. 360 area code. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, my name is Becky. I'm calling from Washington State.
Welcome, Becky. What can we do for you?
I want to know if I partition my hard drive on my new laptop, which comes with Windows 10, if I purchase Antivirus and I want to put Linux on the second one, will it cover the whole hard drive or just that partition? Which one should I install it on, the primary, secondary?
Antiviruses are very dependent on the capabilities of the manufacturer. I'm speaking as someone who's a former systems engineer at McAfee, so I'm very familiar with the engines that are out there for antivirus and how they operate. It depends. Like the answer on anything with technology is it depends. For instance, if your antivirus engine is in Windows and you want to have that antivirus engine be able to look at files that are on a Linux partition, then you want to use a Linux partition that is readable by Windows. Well, there's not a lot of those.
Okay.
The best possible case is maybe FAT32 and NTFS, except Linux doesn't do a great job with either of those, really. And quite honestly, the engine that you have for your Windows antivirus probably doesn't have the signatures you need to be able to identify viruses from other operating systems. So it may be that even if you were able to get a partition that Windows would at least be able to read and your antivirus would be able to access, it probably still would not be able to identify any malicious software on those partitions, because who would think that someone would put Linux on a machine with a Windows antivirus? Well, of course, Becky would.
I would.
so that's.
I would, because Microsoft sent out updates in October that completely wiped my hard drive.
Oh,
so
you too. Me too.
I'm not sure what you do about that.
I'm right there with you. Oh, yes. They completely corrupted it. It wouldn't boot anymore. I had to reinstall the whole thing. Got a blank desktop.
I lost everything. So, yeah, is there any kind of class action suit for people that had lost data like that?
I think that's a great idea, except with any class action suit in any industry, what that means is you'll end up getting a $15 coupon that you can use towards your next purchase of the next Windows operating system.
That's why I went Linux on my new one.
See, now we're starting to understand more about your idea of putting Linux on there. One advantage you do have is that there's not a ton of malicious software out there for Linux, but there are Linux specific antivirus applications out there that are open source and freely available. There's also some out there that can be purchased. So when you're in Windows and working, you'll be protected in Windows. If you secondary boot over to Linux, just have a Linux antivirus running on that operating system, and you'll be protected while you're on the Linux side.
Okay, that's a great idea.
That's your best bet if you want to try to stay safe on those, and that's a constant challenge, and I can't say I blame you at all, Becky.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Best of luck. I wish I could do that. I wish I could just throw out my Windows 10 and put Linux on there, but I have applications that require Windows to be able to do that. Well, some of you may have even noticed that the operating system I use in front of me, these are our Mac machines. The switching system for my video, which is right here, that's a Windows machine. That's Windows 7. I've got Windows 10 in the other room, and I've got Linux on my operating system and my network address storage device. So I've got a mix of everything anyway that are there. It's just a mess for those and having those things there. Back to the phones. A lot of people calling in this week. Let's see what we can get through on the 757 area code. If I click the right thing, there we go. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, how you doing, Professor? My name's Jeff. I'm calling from Virginia Beach, Virginia.
All right. Hello, Jeff. What can we do for you?
Well, I need your advice. I just finished up my A-plus class last month. I've taken my 901 exam twice and failed it twice. So basically, what am I doing wrong? What do I need to do? I mean, I'm kind of stumped here. I passed my first fundamentals exam, the IT one. IT fundamentals. I passed that.
Yep.
But this 901, and I'm afraid it'll be the same way with 902. It's just beating me up. So I really don't know how to focus. Or maybe I'm just studying wrong. So just basically, I wanted your advice.
Well, you're preaching to the choir. I am awful with certification exams. I'm not a good studier for them. And then when I get into the room, I have a lot of anxiety taking the exam. I go through the first 10 minutes of a certification exam reading the first multiple choice question over and over again, and yet not interpreting it as if it's written in some other language. And then finally, everything settles down and I get more into the groove and I get through those things. I recall taking an early certification exam in my career that was for cabling, network cabling. It was a CNX exam, and that's one I took 3 times to be able to pass it. I thought, how hard could a cabling certification exam be? Turns out pretty hard. Turns out it's pretty darn difficult to pass that exam. So I usually tell people, well, you've got a number of advantages actually after you fail. You have advantages when you fail an exam that you don't have before you take the exam. So hopefully, and you can tell me if this is the case, Jeff, when you were finished with those exams and you left the exam center, did they give you the sheet of paper giving you your exam results?
Yes, they did both times.
Excellent. So for anyone else who's listening, there will be exam centers that do not play by the rules and don't understand the value of this. And they'll tell you as you're leaving, oh, our printer's broken. Sorry, we can't print that out. Actually, contractually, they have to be able to print these things out. It is required by the exam service. So don't leave the exam center until you have that piece of paper, because as you have seen, Jeff, at the bottom of that piece of paper, it tells you all the topics you got wrong. So it doesn't tell you the questions you got wrong. It just says you missed a topic that dealt with IP addresses that were internal or external. Gives you a very broad description of the things you didn't know. So you have a list of things that could really help you focus in on things you weren't good at during that particular exam session. That doesn't mean you're going to get the same exam again, though. As you probably saw, you sat for the second exam, practically a completely different set of questions. You may have gotten some duplicates, but it's a different exam with different questions and a different emphasis. So you can't rely on memorizing what you had the first time in the hopes that it's going to help you the second time. But that list of exam sections at the bottom of that is incredibly valuable intel, and you should absolutely reference that. What I recommend people do, and this is for all of the CompTIA exams, is make sure you have the exam objectives. It is a great checklist to help you understand if you know everything that could be asked of you on this exam. The exam objectives are incredibly detailed. For those of you out there that have never downloaded these before, everything you need to know is in them. Other organizations don't do this. Cisco doesn't do this. VMware doesn't do this. The other companies, Microsoft certainly doesn't do this. CompTIA gives you a breakdown of every single detail you need to know. So when people ask me, what do I need to know for the exam? I just point them to the exam objectives. It's all there. They spell it out for you. It's now the hard part is you have to now know it. You have to now figure out all that content that's in the exam objectives. And I tell people there's 4 different things you need to do. One, you need a good book. And if you've been using a book now for the first 2 times through this exam and you don't have another book, it's time to throw that book out and get a different book. Not that the book you're using is any worse than another, but I find that different authors have a different voice. They write in different ways. They explain things in different ways. And sometimes getting a different perspective can make you realize a different way to learn that content. It might be better for you to have another book available if you don't have one already. So a lot of people say, can I just watch your videos and pass? Well, you could, but a book is going to give you a lot more information in a much more collapsed form. There's no way I could create a video course that would contain everything that's in any one of those books, because the video course would be 150 hours long. No one would ever be able to watch that. Books teach you a certain way. Videos teach you a different way. So make sure you get a good book. Make sure you watch my videos or anybody else's videos. I don't care. Find the ones that work for you. Watch those videos. The third one is to get plenty of Q&A. And that's kind of difficult. On the internet, there's not a lot of good Q&A that's free. I have some on my site. My monthly study groups certainly do. There's some good books out there that have good Q&A, but that may be a place where you go out to the CompTIA subreddit and ask them around, what are you using for Q&A? Because I think that's an important part too. If you can find a Q&A that asks you questions in a similar style to CompTIA, that's going to help you when you get to your exam, because I'll bet when you sat down for your first exam, you're wondering, how are these questions written? Who does this? They are some weirdly written. There's some weird questions and how they're written. You kind of have to understand the style of them, and I think that's a good strategy going into the exam. And the fourth one, the last one, get plenty of hands-on. The A+ exam doesn't really, the first exam doesn't require a ton of hands-on. There's a little bit, but certainly the 902 and the 1002 exams, you need a lot of hands-on for those. So make sure you're familiar with the operating systems. I just mentioned those free VMware and VirtualBox virtual machines out on modern.ie. That's a great place to go and get as much time on the keyboard as you can so that you understand where these different utilities are, how they work. You can use them without breaking your own system and get familiar with them. That would be my strategy going into the third time, is to focus on those particular areas, those 4 areas: the books, the videos, the Q&A, and the hands-on. Reference the information that was on those sheets you got, and I think you'll be pretty well ready to go for the next time through.
All right. Thanks a lot, Professor Messer. I appreciate your time.
Best of luck, Jeff. Let us know how it goes.
Okay, will do. Thank you very much, sir.
Absolutely. You're welcome. That's always a challenge. It's always frustrating. I remember having to take that cabling exam over and over, and I'm wondering, am I ever going to get this? Well, yeah, you do. You do eventually get it. Don't worry. Holding for quite a while. Thank you, caller at the 201 area code. What's your name? Where are you calling from? Oh, I hear myself.
Hello?
Hello. What's your name?
Hello, Professor Messer. This is Tamir. I'm calling from New Jersey.
Well,
and I would like to thank you very much for your videos. And for the last caller, I want to say I have not done anything since high school. I'm 29 years old, and I wanted to get out of my dead-end job. So I got an exam cram book that comes with exams, and I've been using your videos plus that book basically religiously.
I like that book.
Since the end of July.
I like that book a lot.
It's very good. And yeah, so I would, anything that I got wrong on the exams, I would write down what I was getting wrong, and I would use your videos as a reference just to put it into my head. And also, when you're taking the exam, you have 30 minutes before you accept. It's like you can use that time to like basically meditate. I took 10 minutes at the beginning of each of my exams just to like relax and tell myself like I know this stuff and I can pass it.
I should do that because I mentioned I'm really bad when I get into the exam room. My anxiety level's up. I should probably wait and just read through the terms, the candidate agreement, take my time.
They give you time. You might as well use it. And I used your, go over the pass, skip the, what do you call it?
Yep. There's
the little extra, the little.
They give you a candidate agreement that you have to sign. Yep.
Yes. So, yeah, I passed my A+ in December.
Nice.
I took the 901 in November and the 902 December.
Nice.
I'm certified, and I just started beefing up my resume. And I just wanted to know from you where should I look job wise? I look for a support desk.
Yep.
Like help desk support.
Yep.
I don't know if there's any other places you think I should apply for? I don't really have much relevant experience.
But most organizations know this. They know the people that they're going to put in those help desk, internal help desk, external help desk, in those roles. They know they're going to get them into this first position and then teach them as they go. You're in a good geographical location because there's tons of organizations up there. But now it's time for the full court press. Now it's time to do more than just get your resume up and send it in with those resume front ends on people's websites. Now we need to know people. This is a theme that will go throughout your entire career in technology because like most of our industries, it's a small group of people, really. You know everybody else in your particular area. But now you have to meet those people so that they know who you are, so that they can then trust you to have a position in their organization. This is a great opportunity now that you have the certification. Make sure you get a good LinkedIn page. Make sure it's updated with your certifications. Now's the time to go meet those people. They're in the Microsoft user groups. They're in the Cisco user groups. They're in the VMware user groups. They're in generic technology user groups. But usually if you stick with Microsoft, you stick with Cisco, some of the big names, you do pretty well. Because everybody who's in a company that is managing systems and managing networks goes to these user group meetings. And every single one of these user group meetings has a time where everybody can stand around and talk with each other. And you should absolutely take advantage of this. I'm not good in those situations. Oddly enough, I had a job for the last 20 years. The type of job positions I always had were ones where I would go meet people and shake their hand and talk to them. And of course, I wasn't very good at it, so I had to learn how to be good at it. So there's things you have to be able to ask when you meet them. Hey, here's my name. This is my first time here at the group. Do you come here a lot? Have you been attending these? I thought the thing we're going to do or the thing we just learned was pretty interesting. Where do you work? What do you do? Oh, I'm looking, and me personally, I'm looking for a job. I'm looking to get in at a help desk. Do you guys have a help desk? If I was to put my resume in with you guys, what would you be looking for a help desk person? How could I get in the door with your group? What things do you think I should be working on? Have them answer a question for you that can first let them know you're interested, and then secondly, actually help you get a job in those organizations. Hey, can I get on your LinkedIn? Can I send you a resume? And I mentioned this in other study groups. People love it when they find someone who's looking for a job and that their company has an opening, because someone who's internal to an organization, almost every organization I've ever worked for, has a bounty program, effectively, where if I bring a resume to my HR department and they hire you, I get some money. So if you show up and say, oh, you guys have openings in your help desk, hey, you want to take my resume in and give it to do you guys have a bounty program? Maybe you can use me and get some money from me for me being hired. People love to do that. There's people I've worked with who are resume collectors. They get they're their own internal recruiting company. They try to get all the resumes they can and hand them into HR, because if anybody gets hired, they get some money. So you should absolutely take advantage of those things. First, they're already in a help desk group or a user group. Secondly, they see that you're at the user group. You must be interested in this technology. And now they know you. And people tend to hire people they know. It's much better than hiring a stranger off the street. Make sure you get involved with those things. The other thing I would mention is, if you don't already have a good home lab set up of any kind, whether it's virtual or physical, get something going. Install Windows. Get a web server running on there. Access the web server from the browser that's on another computer, so that when you get into an interview finally, after going through all of this, and you're sitting in front of somebody and they say, what's your experience with Windows Server 20s, whatever, 2008 R2? And you get to say, well, I've done this and this and this and this, and I've done it with 2012, and I've used this latest version. Oh, and I installed Active Directory, and I configured these things. Now you're already talking their language, and they see that you've already been working on these technologies. So even though you don't have any what we call practical experience in the industry, you have an interest, a drive, and you actually do have a little bit of stick time with these particular technologies. Whenever you sit down in front of somebody who's hiring, those things really, really, really make a difference.
Thank you very much. That's definitely my next step, along with starting your Network Plus videos. So thank you very much, Professor. I enjoy everything you do, and I will be purchasing your Network Plus practice questions.
Well, I appreciate that. And best of luck to you. I think what you're doing is a great thing. And as I've told people over and over and over again, there probably is no other industry in the world that has more opportunity and more upward mobility than technology. And I just wish more people would take advantage of that.
Thank you. Have a great day, man.
Best of luck to you, sir. That's fantastic. I think that if anyone is going to be in a position where they're trying to get the next step, it's more than just sending out resumes. Make sure that it's just people in the chat room, socialize? I don't know. Yes, socialize. All you have to know is certain things. Now, I would never, I don't watch football. I'm not a big football watcher, primarily because I'm sitting in here shooting video all the time. But this entire thing that I've been doing, we've been doing this for about 14, 15 years now. So as I mentioned, back in the 600 series of the A+ exam, and before that, we had training products and things that we were doing. But I was working a day job and doing this at night and on the weekend. So I didn't have time for anything. No time to watch a football game, certainly. If I was here at home or on the weekend, I was working on content, because that's the only way things were going to move up. So my scenario was that Monday, I'd have to go to a meeting where people were talking about the games from Sunday. So I'd have to kind of sift through, give me the quick 5-minute ESPN.com breakdown of what happened yesterday. Was there anything crazy in the local game with the Falcons that I need to know about? And now I can at least talk to them when we go into those first 10 minutes of the meeting, because those are fun to talk about things like that. It's not all work all the time. I used to work for a company based out of Boston. We'd spend the first 20 minutes of a meeting talking about Boston sports. They love their sports in Boston. We talk forever. Oh yeah, we're actually in a meeting. We need to do some work now after 15 or 20 minutes. So I had no idea. Like, no, mom. Like, I don't know what you're talking about with those. But there we go. We were able to do it. 661 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name? Where are you calling from? Oh, hi, caller.
This is John. I'm calling from Texas.
Hello, John from Texas. What can we do for you?
Well, I had a few questions I wanted to ask.
Fire away.
Do you know anything about Mac?
Well, you mean the Mac OS operating system?
Yeah, Mac hardware, Mac software.
In fact, I do.
Called File Vault. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that.
I don't use it a lot in my systems, but I am familiar with it.
Okay, but if I were to install Windows on a boot camp partition and have File Vault on at the same time, would that cover the entire hard drive or just the Mac partition?
I think it is just the Mac partition, because I don't think File Vault is going to be able to do the encryption of the NTFS content. I think it's only going to be for the EFS or the journaled OS that Mac OS uses. I don't think File Vault is going to be able to do that. However, if you're installing Windows on a Windows partition, I have exactly that configuration on the machine that's in front of me. So I can reboot this and boot it into Windows 10, so I can do gaming in Windows instead of the gaming in Mac OS. You could, of course, set up BitLocker on the Windows side and have effectively the same protections. It obviously would be separate from the encryptions that we're using on the Mac OS side, but at least you'd have the same protection.
I understood. Because when I get enough money, I wanted to invest in an iMac Pro with both Mac OS and Windows 10 Pro. And both, of course, with encryption. I know all-in-ones are a bit scoffed at for gaming, but I don't just want to do gaming. I want to run a lot of virtual machines. I want to. There's a whole host of things: 3D modeling, all kinds of security testing, and browsing the internet as securely as possible, essentially.
Well, that is exactly the configuration I have sitting in front of me. I have an iMac Pro. This machine is the 2.3 gigahertz, which is, what is it, 16 core, something ridiculous like that. 128 gig of memory. I've got 4 terabytes of SSD in here. And I use it for exactly the things you're talking about, being able to do video editing, full speed rendering, but also be able to flip over and do some Windows stuff too.
Oh, don't tease me with that. I really want the exact configuration with it.
It's
16 gigabyte HBM2.
I highly recommend. I'm pretty happy with the iMac Pros. They have been. I've used iMacs through the years. When we start, for those of you that are not Mac people listening, it's sort of, we're going to drone on for just a second here. But Apple used to have their Mac Pro line, and they still do. But they have not been updating that hardware as quickly as a lot of industry professionals would like. There's rumors that they will have a new flavor of Mac Pro coming out this year. That may be another option for you to look at as well. But I needed something last year that was had the power and the capacities that I needed, and iMacs were a perfect fit for that. So that's what I went with, was the iMac Pro.
I see. I would go with that. It's about, I would say, about a third of the weight of the current computer I have, with 3 times as many cores.
Yeah.
The one I have, it's not a slouch, but I could go much better. And your configuration is the one I really had my eyes on.
For me, it was a little bit of an easier decision, because the older iMac I had was about 3 years old. And what 3-year-old machines doing video editing cannot quite keep up with the things that I needed to do. So for me, it was an easy decision. They're relatively expensive if you try to compare them to Windows-based systems, but the advantages of the platform for me went well beyond what the cost of the system was. And it's a balancing act for everybody, and I get that.
I see. And I also wanted to dabble into Windows Server. In layman's terms, how would you define Active Directory?
Active Directory is probably the thing that is the biggest game changer for Microsoft. It's the reason that Microsoft has such a handle, an iron grip of the enterprise, and why Active Directory is everywhere is that it is the thing that ties all of the devices, all of the computers, all the servers, and everything in the environments together. Not only is it a centralized directory, that's what Active Directory really stands for. It's a directory of all the people and all the things that are in your systems. And people say, well, why is that valuable? Because the way Active Directory integrates with the operating system allows you to administer all of those systems from one screen. So if you have 10,000 computers in your environment and you would like to make one change to all 10,000 of those computers, you simply make that change on your Active Directory server, and it magically propagates to all of the other Active Directory servers and then out to all of the other thousands of computers in your environment. There's really nothing else like that in the industry. It is a incredibly powerful management system for anything that you're doing. It's incredibly complex, but that complexity brings power to the industry, to the enterprise. And someone who's very, very familiar with the intricacies of Active Directory is someone who can really make all of the computers in their environment dance around and do whatever they need for them to do. It's incredibly powerful, and you don't see this in Linux. You don't see it in Mac OS, not to the degree that operating systems are with Active Directory. It is a remarkably powerful system. And everybody's waiting to see, is somebody else going to step up and do something as good as that? Well, they better get on it, because Microsoft's been doing this for years now.
Okay. And I also have a question about file security / integrity. Say if I put something on an SD card and turn on the hardware, write protection switch.
Right.
And if I were to somehow run into ransomware, which is supposed to encrypt everything, including all maps and drives, will that data be safe on the SD card with the write protection switch on?
If your SD card reader uses a hardware check for that write-only switch, then you're protected. It's not going to write anything. It's built into the firmware of that SD card reader, and no software anywhere would be able to get around the firmware of that SD card reader and somehow get around that physical write-only switch that's on that SD card. So you would technically be protected from anything trying to make any changes to that card.
Okay, thank you. Is there a way to tell if that hardware check is enabled or on?
That, I think all of the SD card readers are supposed to have that, but the only thing you can really do is go back to the manufacturer and confirm that with them. They're the ones who would have to be able to tell you that, nope, we really do a hardware check for the write-only selection on that card.
Okay, and would the same principles apply to something like an encrypted disk image, for example?
Well, as long as you have the read-only check
on Mac OS
set, nobody's writing to that card, so you can put anything on that card.
Okay, all right. I think I do thank you for taking the time. It was great to meet you, even though it was only over the phone.
Well, good luck with your quest to get that iMac Pro. I think you're going to like it.
Thank you. I got an eye on yours. I'm just kidding. I think I'll buy my own once I get enough money.
Thanks, John. Best of luck. One of the things that I I've always challenged with, I'm always looking at is what am I going to do next? And right now, the iMac Pro is working extremely well for me. Quickly in the chat room, we're going to go back to the phones. 404, you're next on the list. What mic is this? That's a popular question. This is a Heil, H-E-I-L, PR40, PR, Papa Romeo, PR40 microphone. And it's a good microphone for spoken voice. I've been using this mic for, well, since I've been doing videos. So 15 years, goes back a while. And I got a few of them. There's the one back here. I guess I moved it. It's up here now, somewhere else. But these are great mics. So I've stuck with those. They seem to have worked well for me. Also in the chat room, why do people prefer Mac computers for video editing if Windows machines can do the same? Because when you set your computer to render an hour or 2 hour long video and it's going for hours to be able to do this, Mac OS doesn't reboot your system in the middle to do an upgrade. That's why. At least for me, that was the reason. For me, that was the straw that broke my back. Could not throw out my Windows computer fast enough because I simply could not manage my own operating system. It would not listen to me. It would reboot, upgrade, regardless of what I told it. And it continues to do it to this day. Windows 10 in the other room continues to be a problem child. I need an operating system that I work on, not one that works on me. That was the big difference for me. Functionally, are they the same? Yeah, I can run Premiere Pro in Windows. I can run Premiere Pro in Mac OS. They're exactly the same program. They work exactly the same. But the big difference is everything around that. And it's quite honestly, Mac OS is a lot more elegant than Windows. I know that's not necessarily a deal breaker, but I'm on my computer all day. And I mean all waking moments. So I need something that is easy to work with, and Mac OS certainly is. Okay, holding forever, the 404 area code. Hello, caller. Thanks for holding. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, my name is Kurz from Atlanta, Georgia.
Welcome.
I recently took the 901 and 902. Although I'm closer with 902, I wanted to know about some encouraging words to be like, what should I try to restudy on, do them separately by monthly?
So are you saying that you took both the 901 and the 902 at the same time, or that you've passed one and you're working on the other?
Well, it's before I took both of them 2 weeks apart.
Okay. And what was the result of taking them 2 weeks apart?
For the 902, for the 902, I was 44 points off. As for the 901, I was 80 points off.
So really not too far off. In the big picture of things, you were actually pretty close to passing these exams. The one thing that I recommend people do with both the 901, 902, and I recommend exactly the same thing if you're planning to take the 1001 or 1002 for others people that are listening, is to focus on one at a time. CompTIA used to have quite a lot of overlap in the exams. So you would take a 601 exam, and when you got to the 602 exam, there was a lot of overlaps. For instance, they would ask you questions about the fundamentals of Windows on the 601 and then ask you about troubleshooting Windows on the 602. One of the things you'll notice now that we're up to the 900 series, and this started with the 800, but the 900 and again with the 1000 series, is that the two exams don't have a lot of overlap. They are effectively designed to be standalone exams, which means you can study for one exam, get all the knowledge you need for that single exam, get it in your head, take the exam, pass it, and then completely shift gears over to the other exam without any type of penalty whatsoever, really. There's not a lot of overlap between those two. One of the challenges you have when trying to learn both the 901 and the 902 together is it is an incredible amount of content. If you are already somebody who's been in the industry for 10 years, you already know about building your own computers, you already understand the differences between single data rate and double data rate memory, and you understand the differences on how a CD-ROM drive versus a DVD-ROM versus a Blu-ray work, then maybe you could take both of them together. But I wouldn't do that. I have sat for both of these exams before, and even I'm not going to take both of them on the same day or even study for both of them at the same time. I think a best strategy for most people is to focus on a single exam, get through all of that content, pass that exam, and then finally shift gears over to the other exam completely. I think that may be the difference for you as well, because your numbers are so close to that passing score. It may be that focusing on a single exam may be the only thing you'd have to worry about.
Right, so study one thing for a month and study the other one.
I would study it until you pass that exam and then study the other one. I would not shift gears until you finally pass that first exam.
All right, I'll do that before they retire.
Then that was the next thing I was going to mention, is that if you were talking about the 1000 series exams, you could take the one of the 1000 series exams on July 15th, and you've got 3 years until you have to pass the second one, until they retire that particular version. With 900 series, you got until July 31st for both of them. So the clock is counting down. But also, don't stress yourself out over that, because even if you don't make it, even if they retire the 900 series, the 1000 series, not that different. So all of the work that you've really put into studying for your 901, most of that carries over. 80% of it carries over to the 1001 if that's what you ended up having to do. Would not be the end of the world.
Okay.
You sound like you're ready to go. You sound like you're absolutely going to take care of this now. Do you think there are particular aspects of the 901 and 902 that are holding you back, or things that you think may need more effort now that you've gone through the exams?
Well, I understand I want to try finish up on. I want to try to retake the 902. It's just I'm finally getting the grasp about doing the Windows recovery environment for using the command lines.
And this is the challenge you have, is that now that you've been working, they mentioned this in the chat room, now that you've been working on the 901, now you've shifted gears over to the 902. You're in the operating system. You're dealing with troubleshooting at the command line, the operating system, the emergency recovery, understanding all of those commands, which have nothing to do with the 901. So that's why I always mention you can take either one of them at any time. So if you're really into the 902 right now and you're doing lots of hands-on and you're really focusing on the 902, keep doing that. Focus on the 902, go take the 902 exam and pass it. And only after that point, now you can shift gears back to the 901 and take care of that way. Doesn't matter which one you do, just as long as you get them both done before the end of July.
All right. Thank you, Professor.
I wish you the best of luck with that one. I think you're going to do fine. You're right there. I think the extra work you put in is going to go far. Best of luck.
Thank you.
Absolutely. There's plenty that you can do, especially when you're that close. It's not like you got in the 500s. So you're very close to that passing number. I think you're going to be fine. Back to the calls. Let me quick. Someone in the chat room, they were talking about how close together you should take these exams. And I think it helps if you, as soon as you finish one of them, that you don't really take any time. Just continue on to the next one. First, it's easy if you're already in the mode of studying. You pass the exam, keep that mode going. It's hard to stop. I'm going to take 2 weeks off, and then I'll start up again. You know how hard it is to start up again after 2 weeks? It's really hard. So make sure that you are able to keep it going. If you're someone who really wants to get these things done, it helps just to keep that. You're already in the mode. You already got it going. You got the momentum. So keep using that momentum. To the 571 area code. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, how you doing? I literally just heard the beep. So my name is Lace. I'm calling from Virginia. Again, I've called here before. So
welcome back.
So currently, thank you. So I'm currently, I'm currently doing the studying for the 901 now. I did buy your the question and answer for the 901.
Oh, thank you.
Now the only thing is, you're welcome. So the only thing is that I'm literally still in the beginning of doing the 901 questions. and I know you've just talked about this recently, but this is a different situation where I'm literally still in the beginning of the part 1 of the 901. So, there's 4 parts to it. Yep. Now the exact thing is that the only problem I'm having is that I keep going back. Now, what I've done was I put all the questions, and then I put 3 boxes next to each question on a piece of paper. And then if I got it wrong, I check it off if I got it right, or I cross it off if I got it wrong. And then I do that continuously. But I'm afraid that I would still continue on the 901 before, the July comes. And I want to get to the 902, which I haven't gotten to. So, I've went through all your videos. The only thing is that the questions. Now, would you recommend that I should put like a timeline for myself throughout, because I'm planning to really have the 901 done by the end of this month. But the only problem is I'm still stuck on, the first part. And the first part is a lot of questions. So do you think that I should put, keep going back to the same questions, or just keep going forward and then go back to the questions for all the parts?
I would, if my particular method of studying, I like to go all the way through and then circle back once I'm done. One of the things about the 901 that you already mentioned is that first domain is hardware. And so it's incredibly long. That is the biggest part of the exam, and it's the most amount of content on the exam. If you were to look at the 1001 exam, I know that you're not taking that, but for the people that are, you'll notice it's a different format. Hardware is section 3. Section 1 is mobile devices. Section 2 is networking. And then section 3, you finally get to hardware. But again, section 3 in that exam is the biggest one. So one of the things that you don't want to get wrapped up on, and you may even be looking at this and worrying about it, is that section 1 is so big. How am I ever going to get through the rest of this? Well, what you're going to find is when you get to section 2, networking, that wasn't anything in size compared to section 1. Section 3, mobile devices, even smaller. Section 4, troubleshooting, a little more difficult, but it's not as extensive as section 1 happens to be. So it is taking you a long time to get through section 1, but don't worry. Sections 2, 3, and 4 are going to go a lot faster than that.
Okay, yeah. I mean, because the only difference between me and others is that, I mean, I'm 22 now, and I've come to a point in my life where I honestly, like, currently I don't have it. I don't have a job. I don't go to school. This is the only thing I'm focusing on.
Okay.
Now, I believe that this should be an advantage, and others should look at it if they have a lot of time in their hands. They should look at it as an advantage. So I do believe that I'm just going to continue going forward, and I'll go through that. Now, this is my second question here. It's a little bit, off the topic of the exams here. I've heard recently of something called, I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, in the CPUs, something called Spectre and Meltdown. Are you familiar with those?
Yes. The vulnerabilities associated with CPUs, yes.
Okay. Now, do you think that, is there a certain way to protect ourselves as consumers or people that are techie, to protect ourselves, or if, in a certain way, is there certain programs that we can protect ourselves from these vulnerabilities?
Well, one of the things that was a challenge when these were released is that the actual vulnerability was not one associated with operating system code or application code. It was an issue with the way that the CPU itself operated. So there was no real patch, quote unquote, for it. It was more of a scenario where we either needed to move to a different CPU or find what effectively would be a shim in an operating system that would prevent an application from using the CPU in that way, which was actually a lot more difficult to implement than a lot of people realized. And in some cases, the software workaround was one that also slowed down the overall operation of the computer. So there were not a lot of great ways to get around this. Unfortunately, what allowed people to do was to have access to data inside of the system that normally they would not have access to that was going through the CPU. What most people found is that even though implementing the patches slowed things down, they were protected. And also, as it turned out, these were not simple attacks. These were relatively complex attacks that someone would have to be able to use, and it's not one where you can easily hit a web server and suddenly you're taking advantage of the meltdown vulnerability. So it was one where we all ran around with our arms in the air, flailing and screaming over the end is near, the sky is falling. As it turns out, it really was just a cloudy day, and we were able to put some umbrellas up and we were okay. So those particular vulnerabilities been around for a few years now. And at this point, we've done a pretty good job of swapping out CPUs and making our operating systems look for those types of things. Those would not be the vulnerabilities I would be most interested in or worried about at this point. I think there are much more pervasive and popular vulnerabilities that we should probably be putting more of an effort towards than some of these older things that are more difficult to implement.
Correct. And just one more piggybacking question to that one. So basically, like, let's say that someone is working as a security consultant or security expert or some cybersecurity in that field or any field. Would they have to deal with that as far as that, or is this more of a high-end from the manufacturer type of thing?
No, they absolutely have to deal with that. So I'll take me as an example. So my last position was as a senior systems engineer for a next generation firewall company. My primary position was one of pre-sales engineering, but I also did post-sales engineering and installation and implementation and professional services. So I had to be not only familiar with the operation of that particular piece of technology and how to implement it into some of the biggest networks in the world, but I also had to explain to my customers. In fact, Meltdown and Spectre are very good examples of this, because those vulnerabilities were found while I was at that job, or it was just after. And those types of vulnerabilities happen all the time. It may not be one that is as popular or gets as much press as those particular ones, but vulnerabilities and problems with software happen all the time. And so as a security professional who was representing a product that was supposed to protect people's networks and systems and data, my job was to not only be familiar with the vulnerability and what it was doing, understand how it was working. I didn't have to understand how the programming worked. I didn't have to break it down and decompile it and understand the machine code. I needed to understand what it was attacking and how it was doing it. Was this a buffer overflow? Was it an attack against a problem with the CPU? Was it a SQL injection? What was it? And understand the scope of how that worked. And then I needed to understand, how do we mitigate this? How do we prevent it, block it? How do I tell my customers that they're out there attacking people today? Can I download a new set of signatures for my firewall? Can I create a policy, a security policy that would prevent this on my firewall? So you really had to become knowledgeable from a lot of different perspectives. You had to understand the fundamentals of these attacks and how they operate. You needed to understand the differences between a buffer overflow and a SQL injection and all of these other methods of attacking a system. You had to understand now, after knowing that, what was really going to block it, what was really going to stop it, and what wasn't. And then you needed some way to be able to identify it and track it and know that you actually did stop it. How do I then create a series of reports that could tell me, for the last 24 hours, has anybody tried to do this? Have we blocked it in the last 24 hours? If it got through, what machines are now infected? So it's a multiple things you have to start dealing with. It's like juggling. So you're now juggling all of these different pieces and having to put them all together. And each one of those becomes pretty important for not just me that was representing the products, but my customers who were also having to deal with these types of attacks. They almost had to know more than I did, because they have a ton more operating systems, a lot more other systems in their environment. I just had to worry about my firewall. I in many ways, I had the easy job.
Correct. Yeah. All right. I mean, yeah, that I think that clears it up for me now. That sums it up for me. And also, just one more thing, I'd just like to give a suggestion.
Sure.
For the person that asked about the job, if that's okay. Is that all right?
Absolutely.
Okay. So what I did was, if anybody, the person that asked that question earlier today, or earlier the hour, is that the best thing to do, I would suggest, is when you search for jobs, there is, if you're going to search for jobs online, what I would suggest is take your resume, take the description of that job, and see if it matches with your resume, if you have a current resume with experience. And also the second thing is the best thing to do is if you have like an email, take that email and basically create a whole new Gmail just for applying for jobs. And basically I would suggest is go to every type of job, careers website and, apply specifically. I would say Sunday nights if you want to, because what happens is the employers, when they first look at resumes, I believe they would look at it, the next morning, and Sunday nights, that's when they pile up, in the morning on Monday morning. And I've seen that successful, and that's what I've been doing. And I've gotten so many job offers just because I was doing that. What I was doing before was just applying at random time. But if you apply for at that specific time, would be the best time to do it.
Not only that, one of the things I brought it up, some of you saw me as you were talking, I wanted to bring this up too, is that if you do have something like a Gmail address, you can even customize what you're sending through a particular address. So if you put your Gmail username and the plus sign and then any other text, it effectively becomes a way to customize that email, but it always comes back to you. For instance, if my email address was professormesser@gmail.com, which it isn't, so don't send anybody at that address. But if I put Professor Messer plus and then the name of the company or a set of numbers that would help me track that particular email, that's a good way to do it. And while you were also talking, another thing I thought of was that there have been times when I've had different resumes and different cover letters depending on the job I was interviewing for. So sometimes if it's a very technical job, you may want to have a more technical approach. If it's a job that is less technical or has a different set of requirements, you may want to emphasize those requirements to that particular employer.
Right.
That's fantastic. Thanks.
Okay, well,
I appreciate it, Lee.
Awesome. Yeah, Lace, actually. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Thank you for that. And thank you for your suggestions. Anytime we can give a little bit of insight, I think it helps everybody.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much for your time.
Take care. That's one of the strategies I had with building different cover letters also helped. One of the challenges you get also is that a lot of these go through the automated systems. You have to first get through the automated system that does the check of the keywords, but eventually somebody's going to read this. Eventually there'll be a human being, and you have to write to that human being. And if that's the thing that ultimately you have to worry about, and hope they read it. That was always my concern too. The 909 area code. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
I am calling from Southern California.
Welcome. Thanks for calling.
My name is Raj.
Hey, Raj.
Yes, I think you remember me. I'm still lingering on taking the 901.
At least you're getting a little bit closer now.
Yeah. I was actually calling before from the 502 area code.
Okay.
I guess you don't remember. But anyway, yeah, I just want to ask you, are the 900 series videos gone permanently? And if that's true, then your 1000 series videos, I can use those for preparing for the 900? I think you said we could, right?
Well, first off, nothing ever gets deleted on my side. If you wanted to go back to my YouTube channel and go watch the 600 series videos, which are hilarious, I assure you, because I'm a much younger guy with a completely different set of pieces of equipment in my studio. But those are still out there. The 900 series videos are also still available and will continue to be very prominently displayed on my website until April or August the 1st. As soon as that exam goes away, I don't put that on my front page of my site because people will use them, and those are not the videos they should be watching. But you can always go to my YouTube channel, and I've got 1,100 videos on that channel or more, I think, at this point. So all of my videos, regardless of what version, will always be there. And I will certainly have them on my site very prominently put until August the 1st. The 1,000 series videos, I'm just getting into. I've only got about 40 of those edited and posted so far. And those are only for I'm only into the third section of the 1001 series exam. So I still have months of videos to shoot, edit, and post before that entire course is complete for both of those exams. So it's still going to take some time for all of those courses to be completed. And then at that point, I have to work on additional sample tests and Q&A. I have to make sure that, well, my notes are already available for that, so the notes are done. So all of these things are incremental. They just take time to do. And eventually, over the next few months, you'll see all of the 1,000 series exams finally or 1,000 series videos finally get completed.
Also, on your notes for the 900 series, for the 901, I noticed that there's a complete lack of coverage of the display technologies that you go over in your 900 series video. Was that an oversight, or was that done deliberately?
It was intentional. The 900 series course notes were some of the very first set of course notes I created now 4 years ago, 3.5 years ago. They were what I decided to do with the 900 series course notes was find the things that I thought were most important and put those into a set of course notes. And in fact, if you look at the 901 and 902 course notes combined together, you're talking about a total of, 47 pages worth of stuff. So that's for both 901 and 902. Now I've got 1001 and 1002 course notes where I've changed the philosophy a bit. Now, instead of taking what I think is the most important content, people have said, I don't want most important, I want everything. And so all of my course notes now going forward have all of the text, all of the graphics, all of the charts, everything I have on a slide, I stick in those course notes. So you'll find that in the 1,000 series, in Network Plus, in Security Plus, it's a different style of course notes than it is, and it's certainly completely comprehensive to the videos versus the 901 and 902 course notes, which I still think are extremely good, but I don't cover every bit of text from every single slide in those course notes, and that was done intentionally.
Okay. I guess I can manage without the display technology notes and just go with the videos.
I think what I tried to do with the 900 series is give you the core pieces of the things that you would need to know. I would just assume that if you went through that video that you would already have a lot of these things in your back pocket. And it was more of a decision where, do I put that in? Do I not put it in? Because I thought, I don't want to make these too big. I don't want to make them overwhelming. And then after I released the product, people said, oh no, we totally want overwhelming. So I changed my perspective a bit. So going forward, it's overwhelming. I'm giving you everything. But for the 900 series, it was a different approach.
Right. And last question. There is a website called Exam Compass with a whole bunch of practice tests and they seem to coincide with the exam objectives. Have you seen that before? Have you gone through that yourself?
I've heard other people talk about it, but I've not even, I probably have been to the site, but I've not spent any time of any consequence looking at their questions or answers. I'd spend all day going to other people's sites doing that if that was the case, unfortunately. Instead, I just focused on making my own and making sure those were as good as possible.
Okay, so then it wouldn't do me any good to ask you, well, maybe it would. On the real exam, would there be a question where it would ask you to pick more than one if it's not a performance-based question?
Thinking back to the questions that I had on previous A+ exams, it's certainly possible. It's possible. It's part of the engine that they have. But normally when you get a question like that, they tell you how many to choose. So it would say pick 2 out of a list of 6 or 7 or 8, and then you would pick 2 from there. It would be check boxes that you would choose. And if you didn't choose 2, if you chose 1 or you chose 3 and you hit the next button, it would tell you, well, you know you didn't choose 2 on that one, right? There are not a lot of questions like that, though. I think I haven't seen the latest versions. Obviously, the 1000 series exam isn't out yet, and I'm looking forward to getting more intel on those exams as soon as they're released. But I've noticed that CompTIA has moved more towards questions that are simpler to understand. I used one today as an example that had a not in it. Like, pick which one of these is not like this. And I've noticed that CompTIA is not doing many of those now. Those tend to be confusing on an exam. Wait, I'm supposed to choose the one that's not like that? Instead, they're approaching their questions more of choose the one that is. And I'm seeing a big move with both Network Plus and the last Security Plus to make the questions a lot more straightforward, to make them less questions that seem to be translated to some other language and back to English again. I don't know what was going on there. But I see an improvement there, and I'm hoping that continues with the 1000 series.
All right. Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it.
Best of luck.
Thanks. I need it.
We all do. And that's the challenge with these exams. It's just getting through all of that content. To the 562 area code. Hello, caller. Thanks for holding. What's your name? Where are you calling from? Oh, hear me. You hear that little beep when I come on the line. That's me, and I'm live. Are you there, caller? 562? You turn that stream off and listen in on your phone, and I think you'll be fine. Or maybe not. We'll just listen to me. And you walked away. You're thinking he's never going to come back. You've been holding forever. So I'm going to stick you back in the queue. We'll put you back there. That's a compelling. There you are, back in the queue. So those things. Let's get some questions answered from the chat room. For the folks that are still hanging out, thank you for being here. We're now 2 hours and 30 minutes in. We got a long one today, but that's okay. We're good. My voice is still holding on, so I think we're good. We talked about my mic. Now we're talking about my laptop stand, which is an all-metal stand that my laptop's kind of off the desk here. What stand did I use for this? I think I got it from Amazon. I just tried to find something where I could get off the desk. I knew how to stick things under the laptop. I tried to do that with everything here. All of the screens come up. Everything is off the desk, which helps a lot for the things I use. The stand that I'm using from Amazon is from a company called Rain Design. In fact, there is a picture of a raindrop in the middle of it. Why don't I pull this over so you can see it? And it is M stand, which makes no sense. I don't know what is an M stand. $40. Did I really pay $40 for that? I don't think I did. Maybe I did. But there's the M stand. How delightful. Purchased that in 2012. There you go. So that is the stand I am using. I don't know if that's going to help anyone. I don't know if anybody cares. Somebody cares. Somebody in the chat room cares. It's actually been a great stand. If we're talking functionality, it's been a great stand. Works extremely well. So I like it. It's one that I can move around and keep out of the way. I bought it just for these study groups, actually, because normally this is not in here. Normally this is in the main part of my house, so that I can use it when I'm, sitting at the bar. People are sending me emails. I can be over there with the rest of the family doing administrative stuff, and I use this laptop. So I'll close this up and I'll take it back over shortly. So after this is over, and then when the next week, I'll bring this back in. So the stand usually has my iPad on it during the week. So that's why it's sort of off over to the side right now. But all this changes. This big panel goes away, the screens come closer, this goes away, and then there's a big screen in front of me, that goes away, the windows open up. It's a different world when the live stream's not going on. It really is seems like a very dreary place. It's all dark. There's nothing going on. But no, it's actually quite nice to work in whenever there's not a live stream going on, or when I'm not doing film, when I'm not recording. There's a lot of recording we're doing right now for the 1000 series exam. So most of the time now, when I'm not editing, it does look a lot like this because I'm using exactly the same systems you see in front of me to do the normal recording. And then when I'm not recording, I'm still sitting in this chair anyway. I just bring the screens closer and I'm doing video editing and other pieces. And a lot of these other panels and things, they just go away. I stick them behind me. Get them out of the way. Let's see if the 562 area code came back to the phone. Are you there, caller? Which name were you calling from?
Back to the phone. Are you there, caller? Which name were you calling from?
That is a pretty quick response time, by the way. I have to say that's not a bad lag for a streaming video. YouTube's doing a fine job with that. So I'm pretty happy with what they've done. In fact, we do use YouTube for all of the streaming here. So far, it's worked out pretty well. I've considered using a different streaming service for different features, but I think we do okay. And that response time, incredible. Very nice. They must have done some upgrades lately. I have the option when I'm configuring this and how fast I need it to be. And because we do the live Q&A and we're going back and forth, it really helps if you have this set up in a way that does make it very fast. Otherwise, I'm giving a question and 30 seconds later, people are finally answering the question, which is not necessarily what you want either. Well, we've come to the end of another A+ study group. Remember, next month, we're splitting these up. There will be a 1001 and a 1002 study group. They'll be completely different study groups. So be sure to check the calendar. Going to be incredibly important for next month. And they will be on a Tuesday and Thursday, which is also a big change. So make sure you know about all of that. Come back next week, too. We've got a Network Plus study group next week. We've got Security Plus study group the week after that. I love doing these live streams and like having you here. Not only to answer questions from the chat room and answer questions live in our Q&A, but also to call in as well. We really could not do this without you. Thank you so much for being here. We're going to have a lot more A+ content next month. We're looking forward to having you back here. Be sure to sign up for those lists. The registration lists are available at the calendar as well at professormesser.com/calendar. Thanks so much. We will absolutely see you next time. Thanks. We've got also in February a lot more differences between the 900 and 1000 series exams. You don't want to miss that either. Thanks for being here this time, and we'll see you next time on the A+ Study Group.